Chapter 2480, Defeated. Surging divine powers were charging the Blood Mountain sword and causing it to begin trembling violently and became extremely blood-red. Jian Wushuang stared intensely at the green sword shadow wall coming toward him while he was raising the Blood Mountain sword. A terrifying hatred was gathering in his sword. "I just created this strike not long ago and hasn't shown it to anyone. You'll be its test subject today." Jian Wushuang's voice was cold as ice as the energies in Blood Mountain sword were charged to its limit. In the blink of an eye, the wide-spanning transmigration law power began to burst out. Transmigration sword technique, hateful path toward heaven. Boom. The Blood Mountain sword swung downwards. The swing had sliced the void into two halves. Hate, hate, hate. The sword light that was filled with an infinite hatred willfully swept across the void. Sword essences filled everywhere it passed by as if it had paved the entire way to heaven. Hateful path toward heaven was a move Jian Wushuang created while studying Fengtian scroll. It was also the third move in his transmigration sword technique after Endless Cycle and Samsara Empty Strike. It was also the debut of that move. A sword light that was filled with hatred stunned everyone as soon as it appeared. Under the watching eyes of countless experts around, the magnificent hatred-filled sword light clashed head-on with the wave-like green sword shadow that was pressing in. For a moment, it looked like two entire worlds had collided. What came with it was an earth-shattering boom. The infinite sword essences and divine powers expanded violently towards every direction. The heavens were screaming while the earth was shaking. A divine power windstorm suddenly swept up which reached far and wide. It shrouded the entire battlefield in a force that could destroy heaven and earth. Retreat. Let's retreat, quickly, back off as far as we can, hurry. The experts' disciples from various sects who were standing around the battlefield retreated in fear. Many pairs of fearful eyes stared at the divine power windstorm on the battlefield and were gasping in awe. It was way too powerful. For those first-class and peak divine demons, an ultimate god's ability was way too strong, such that it was horrifying and suffocating. Fan Jiangxian's ability was to be expected, but I didn't expect Jian Wushuang could be this strong as well. Someone exclaimed. A while ago, all of them had the idea of killing Jian Wushuang. However, at that point, many sects have given up on that notion. Obviously, none of the Wuxia wilderness sects would take experts with an ultimate god's battle strength lightly. Even Narcissus Island, one of the top 10 sects, only had one known ultimate god was the Lord of Narcissus. In the other sects, many did not even have an ultimate god in residence. Therefore, however much they hated Jian Wushuang, they would not pick a fight with an expert possessing an ultimate god's battle strength. Ring 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 tilde the heaven and earth finally calmed down. The overbearing divine power windstorm had also died down gradually, revealing what was supposed to be the battlefield. However, the previously flat battlefield grounds had disappeared and was replaced with what appeared to be huge craters left behind by the sweeping divine power. A figure stood on each end of the battlefield. Naturally, they were Jian Wushuang and Fan Zhenxian. They stared at each other from either end of the battlefield with extremely cold expressions. Has a conclusion been determined yet? Who won and lost exactly? Those sects' experts stood around the battlefield and stared at both of them. If it was in the past, they would assume Fan Zhenxian was the winner without a doubt. He was a widely recognized true ultimate god and the top-ranking sword cultivator with an incredible reputation after all. Regardless of how strong Jian Wushuang could be, he was probably only in the divine demon realm in the end. However, as the battle carried on to that point, nobody could be certain about Fan Zhenxian being the victor anymore. The battle strength that Jian Wushuang displayed was truly not below that of Fan Zhenxian. Everyone stared at both of them as the battlefield quieted down. Right at that moment, there were some slight changes to Jian Wushuang's expression. The corner of his lips curved slightly upwards as he wore a mysterious smile. The number one sword cultivator of Wuxia Wilderness is only so-so. Right when his voice faded. A big gulp of blood shot out of Fan Jiangxian's mouth and spilled all over the ground. Fan Zhenxian was pale to begin, but his face had turned deadly white now. The breath of his divine power had also sharply decreased. The sight of that shuddered everyone on the scene. He lost. Fan Zhenxian has been defeated. The number 1 sword cultivator actually lost to Jian Wushuang, who was still merely a divine demon. Oh, heavens. From today onwards, the title of Wuxia Wilderness number 1 sword cultivator would have to change its owner. The experts were wearing all kinds of expressions on their faces, with many of them feeling agitated. Fan Zhenxian had become a legend very early on. However, someone had stepped violently on the legend that day. By stepping on the legend himself, he became the new number 1 sword cultivator. It was none other than Jian Wushuang. How's that possible? Long Zishan, Yu Ouching, and many people from Narcissus Island were all shocked beyond words. They almost could not believe what they had just witnessed. Especially Narcissus Island's elder Linghe and the 7th elder. They secretly felt regretful for agreeing with the Lord's decision to abandon Jian Wushuang now. However, it was too late. On the edge of the battlefield, although Fan Zhenxian was badly injured, he was not dead yet. He stuffed 2 elixirs into his mouth, and as those elixirs went down, the paleness on his face slightly faded away. Afterward, he once again looked at Jian Wushuang with mixed feelings. Unexpectedly, you don't only have an incredibly deep understanding of space-time law. Your understanding of transmigration law was not bad either and had reached the 1st stage. In addition, that strike which you created by combining transmigration law and your own sword skill was truly powerful. Fan Zhenxian was extraordinarily skillful with the sword, but even he had to admit the strike Jian Wushuang last shown was truly remarkable and strong. Judging purely from the power of that final strike, it was even slightly stronger than his own most powerful strike. I have nothing to say about losing to you. From now on, the number 1 sword cultivator of Wuxia Wilderness is you. Fan Zhenxian seemed to have lost all his pride as an ultimate god expert before Jian Wushuang. The number 1 sword cultivator of Wuxia Wilderness, haha. I have no interest whatsoever in this title. By the way, aren't you sending messages for reinforcement? There's no need to hide, just take out the message token and do it. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly with an air of jest. Fan Zhenxian's face changed right away. As it was exactly what he was doing, secretly sending messages for other supreme elders to come. As for what he said, that was just to distract Jian Wushuang. Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang had read his mind. What surprised Fan Zhenxian was, Jian Wushuang remained calm as usual without any thoughts of escaping even after knowing he was summoning reinforcement. Where did his self-confidence come from? Chapter 2481. The 3 Supreme Elders hum. 2 figures slowly stepped out of the spatial passage when it appeared. One of them was a 2 meters tall, brawny elder with long purple hair. His towering figure stood there like a mountain. The brawny elder had black thunderbolts flashing around his body which made him look exceptionally sturdy and formidable. The other person was a slender young woman completely shrouded in a black robe. The pretty young woman stood there without making a sound as if she had turned into darkness. The people on the glade turned tumultuous when they saw those 2 arrived. Ultimate gods. 2 ultimate gods. These 2 are the other 2 supreme elders of the Great Compassion sect. The black-robed woman was An Junju. I heard she's a killer and the top assassin in the Wuxia Wilderness. However, after she became a supreme elder a long time ago, she had stopped doing that. Otherwise, anyone could hardly survive after being targeted by her. The purple long-haired elder is the tyrannical Lei Chong, who was also a reputable ultimate god super expert in the Wuxia Wilderness. Lei Chong, An Junju, and Fan Zhenxian. All the 3 supreme elders of Great Compassion sect are here. A series of exclamations broke out from the crowd. The various sects' divine demons experts shuddered. Ultimate gods were highly exalted in Wuxia Wilderness. It was usually extremely difficult to even see an ultimate god. No wonder everyone was in a stupor when they saw 3 ultimate gods appearing together. Those 3 ultimate gods were there for Jian Wushuang alone. You are here. That's quick. Jian Wushuang stood there watching the arrival of An Junju and Lei Chong with a hint of excitement in his eyes. Along with Fan Zhenxian, I hope these 3 will not let me down. Jian Wushuang's fighting spirit had explosively risen in his heart. The 3 supreme elders of the Great Compassion sect had soon gathered together. "Brother Zhenxian, are you injured? What's the matter?" Lei Chong asked. The supreme elders had addressed each other as brothers and sisters. "It's Zhen Wushuang. Not only did he possess the power of an ultimate god, but his combat skills are also at the peak of the ultimate god realm. I was careless and got accidentally injured when I fought against him." "It's him?" Lei Chong glanced over at Zhen Wushuang. "He's only a divine demon, a second-class divine demon to be precise. Could he possibly have the combat prowess of an ultimate god?" And Juju was surprised. "Don't underestimate him. His strength and capabilities are not confined to his cultivation level. Besides, he has an extremely high understanding of laws. Not only can he appear in 2 hologram images using the spacetime law, but he has also mastered the first stage of transmigration law. His sword skills are comparable to mine," Fan Zhenxian explained solemnly. "It's strange that he did not try to escape even after knowing I've sent a message to both of you. I believe he must have some strong backing which he hasn't revealed yet." Lei Chong's expression was cold. "Strong backing? No matter who or what that is, he will have to die for hurting you and killing so many Great Compassion sect's genius disciples. Let's act together and kill him." Following Lei Chong's stern orders, the 3 supreme elders of the Great Compassion sect concurrently took action. Hum! A majestic sword intent rose as Fan Zhenxian displayed his sword world once again. Although the sword world was only a shell, it had a repression effect on Zhen Wushuang. While the sword world rolled out, "Junior brother Fan, I'll help you," said An Junju, who waved while being shrouded in a black robe. A stream of dark air current instantly welling up from her body before shot out in all directions at an astonishing speed. The dark air currents soon enveloped the entire battlefield and formed a huge dark domain before combining with the sword world and crashing down on Zhen Wushuang. This move, Zhen Wushuang's eyes flickered. He recognized the technique performed by An Junju. When the few Great Compassion sect's genius disciples besieged him in Saint's Tomb, Yu Aoqing, one of the 12 minor kings, had performed the exact same move. However, Yu Aoqing's move was obviously not at the same power level as An Junju's. An Junju was Yu Aoqing's master after all and had taught Yu Aoqing that technique. The combination of the sword world and the dark domain had greatly oppressed Zhen Wushuang. The 3 supreme elders made their moves and attacked Zhen Wushuang with Lei Chong leading the attack. It was 3 against 1. The various sects' experts who acted as spectators had a strange expression on their faces. In their opinion, Zhen Wushuang's strength was incredible nonetheless, but his age and cultivation level were still rather young. However, those 3 Great Compassion sect supreme elders had joined forces against Zhen Wushuang despite having lived for such a long time. Such bullying behavior was rather embarrassing. Then again, the world was never fair in the first place. Only strength and power were acknowledged. The Great Compassion sect's background and strength were acknowledged, so no one present dared to say anything even if they thought those 3 supreme elders were bullying the younger generation. Thunder exterminate. Majestic black thunderbolts pervaded Lei Chong. Under the guidance of his finger, the black thunderbolts in the void formed 9 black dragons. Each of those 9 dragons contained terrifying world destruction powers. On the command of Lei Chong, those 9 dragons roared and attacked Zhen Wushuang. Zhen Wushuang remained calm and advanced forward as the 9 dragons headed for him. Swash! 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 9 horrifying sword lights appeared at the same time and each of them decapitated one of those 9 dragons' heads. Those 9 dragons could barely even put up a struggle before collapsing instantly. I must say, that was rather powerful, but my moves aren't as simple as it seems either. Lei Chong's eyes were cold as he stared ahead. A large number of black thunderbolts rolled out and instantly formed a black hell after the 9 dragons' collapse, trapping Zhen Wushuang within it. Following that, a large number of black thunderbolts blasted upon Zhen Wushuang. Chapter 2482. Fighting against 3 ultimate gods. Each of those black thunderbolts bombarded Zhen Wushuang's divine body. If it was an ordinary divine demon, those black thunderbolts would have instantly pulverized his body. However, Jian Wushuang's divine body was the most perfect divine body that only a perfect chaotic creature could possess. The black thunderbolts did no harm to his body. Humph! Letting out a cold and derisive snort, he discharged his majestic divine power and crushed those black thunderbolts into debris. Jian Wushuang was suddenly alarmed. He had similar feelings before in the saint's tomb when Yu Aoqing planned her attack during the siege. Whoosh! Jian Wushuang disappeared and an apparition took the place where his previously physical body was. Chug! The void was torn apart as a sharp dagger directly passed through Jian Wushuang's apparition. A shrouded black-robed Junju unexpectedly appeared in the void. She was the one who stabbed the dagger. An apparition? Junju squinted her beautiful eyes. Indeed, it's you. Your skills are much more sophisticated than Yu Aoqing, but it's a pity I won't fall for the same trick twice. Jian Wushuang's figure appeared in a void not far away with a grin on his face. Earlier at Saint's tomb, Jian Wushuang was not able to escape from Yu Aoqing's perfect sudden attack. If it were not because of his invincible divine body, he would have perished. Even though Junju had the perfect timing and technique, Jian Wushuang was no longer the same as before. His ability to perceive danger had improved by multiple folds, allowing him to detect Junju's assassination move far in advance. Don't be too happy. Junju glanced at Jian Wushuang coldly. In a flash, the dark air current circulating around produced identical figures. Two figures stood side by side, each holding a dagger and aimed violently at Jian Wushuang. This is the Dark Clone. Jian Wushuang was amazed. The Dark Clone was an ability acquired when the one reached a rather high level in understanding the law of darkness. Junju had obviously attained that ability with her high understanding of the law. Exterminate. Jian Wushuang raised his sword with a backhand motion. The sword technique impelled spacetime and caused ripples to form in the surrounding void. That was his spacetime sword technique, first form, cutting snow. Two dark clones were immediately smashed by Jian Wushuang's sword. Jian Wushuang. A loud roar sounded abruptly and Fan Zhenxian appeared next to Jian Wushuang. His face was stern as the green long sword in his hand turned into a steel whirlwind. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. A series of sword shadows were attacking Jian Wushuang from multiple tricky angles. Jian Wushuang had just defeated the two dark clones and was recovering from the suppression of both sword world and dark air currents. The sudden attack from Fan Zhenxian had caught him off guard. However, he was able to regain his composure very quickly. Piss off, my defeated opponent. Jian Wushuang's long sword thrust forward with the strength of Samsara as he performed Transmigration Sword Technique, second form, Samsara Empty Strike. Interchanging between the palpable and imperceptible moments, it was hard to see which sword moves were real and which were just an illusion. Fan Zhenxian contracted his iris to stay focused. He was wounded by Jian Wushuang before. Although he recovered a fair bit after swallowing the elixir pills, his combat power was nowhere at his peak. He dared not let down his guard and exhausted his strength to resist that attack when faced with Jian Wushuang's sword, causing his body to be expelled to some distance away. Right then, an extremely terrifying and violent aura came from above Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang raised his head, only to find Lei Chong had somehow appeared above him in the void. Lei Chong's body soared to a height of 5 meters with two large hammers in his hands. The two large hammers looked like two hills and impelled the unabating power of black thunderbolts when being waved around. Go to hell, brat. Lei Chong descended like the god of thunder while yelling. The two large hammers in his hand were swinging around frantically, ready to slam down hard on Jian Wushuang. Rumbling. The heaven and earth growled fiercely under those two large hammers. Jian Wushuang knew it was too late for him to dodge, so he could only raise the sword in his hand and discharge an astonishing gush of divine powers to parry off the attack. However, with a loud bang, the heavens seemed to crack open, releasing waves of violent black world-destroying thunderbolts. After the loud noise, a stream of light slammed into the ground below like a meteorite. That stream of light was surprisingly Jian Wushuang. He was smashed into the ground by Lei Chong's two large hammers and the ground suddenly shook as a huge pothole appeared. Before Jian Wushuang could stand up from the pothole, A surging amount of black thunderbolts formed around Lei Chong's body. Black thunderbolts explode. Kaboom! Along with the collision of two large hammers, huge black thunderbolts as thick as buckets descended. The huge black thunderbolt was aimed directly towards the pothole where Jian Wushuang was located. Kaboom! The pothole and the entire surface of the ground were destroyed. The black thunderbolts covered the entire ground and destroyed everything. After a while, the black thunderbolts gradually dispersed. Somewhere above in the void, the trio Lei Chong, and Junzhu, and Fan Zhenxian stood side by side as they looked down below. "Is Jian Wushuang dead?" Fan Zhenxian murmured. "Humph, if just based on attack power, I'm rather powerful and violent among many ultimate gods. This brat has been hit twice in succession. The last Black Thunderbolt's explosion move was extremely powerful. Even an ultimate god who suffered its frontal attack would be severely wounded if not killed. It would be hard for Jian Wushuang, who is just a divine demon, to resist that kind of impact," explained Lei Kuan scornfully. "No, we can't pass judgment based on common sense for Jian Wushuang. His divine body is invincible. Senior brother Lei, your two moves might not be able to kill him, but perhaps it's not a far cry to seriously injure him," said Fan Zhenxian. "Let's see." And Junzhu seemed extremely cold. From around the battlefield, the various sex experts were also staring at the seemingly lifeless scorched earth that had been previously covered by those black thunderbolts. Jian Wushuang was in the hole. Everyone was curious if Jian Wushuang survived those brutal attacks. Suddenly, boom! Large rubbles were lifted up from the pit as a young figure stepped out of the debris and appeared in front of everyone. "Your thunderbolts were good enough to scratch my itch." Jian Wushuang looked up at the trio in the void while grinning from ear to ear. Chapter 2483, Destroyed Has Not Dead. Lei Chong had lightning in his eyes. Not only is he not dead, but the breath of his divine power also has not weakened. "It seems he was unfazed," said An Junzhu coldly. This brat, Fan Zhenxian's expression was extremely ugly. On the ground, Jian Wushuang raised his head to look at the three ultimate gods above and slowly receded his smile. Among the three ultimate god experts, Lei Chong's attack was brutal and is the strongest among the three. And Junzhu is good with the law of darkness and domain control. She is able to derive a clone of herself, and she also has perfect assassination skills. She is indeed someone extraordinary. Fan Zhenxian appeared to be the weakest of them, murmured Jian Wushuang. "These three ultimate gods have joined forces, and it's indeed difficult for me to contend with them single-handedly." If that is the case, Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with a sharp glint. The stellar strength which had integrated into his divine body's blood and essence instantly surged and spread from within his body. 7 Stars Secret Technique, Activate. The 7 Stars Secret Technique was one of the 5 most powerful secret techniques of the 7 Stars Black Sect. It was much more advanced than the Stellar Star Secret Technique practiced by Jian Wushuang in his previous life. The Stellar Star Secret Technique he performed in his past life was heaven-defying. However, without the will of Heaven Wei's influence, he would require a long recovery period before performing it again. On the other hand, the 7 Stars Secret Technique was different. Once the 7 Stars Secret Technique was refined and fully integrated with divine powers, as long as the cultivator had sufficient divine power, one could perform and repeat the technique over and over again without the need to take a break, hence the reason it was considered one of the strongest secret technique of the 7 Stars Black Sect. Jian Wushuang began to execute the secret technique with nothing holding him back. With the power of stellar strength, Jian Wushuang's divine power breath spread out at a speed visible to the naked eye. Initially, he had just crossed into the second-class divine demon realm. However, he soon progressed to peak of the second-class divine demon realm in a short time. He was only a small step away from becoming a first-class divine demon. Having made that achievement, he relaxed his pace a little. The peak of the second-class divine demon. Unfortunately, the first volume of the 7 Stars Secret Technique could merely help me improve by half a realm at most. If I can refine the second volume of the 7 Stars Secret Technique, I would be able to cross into first-class divine demon. Well, it's good enough. Jian Wushuang balled up his fists to examine his powers and felt his divine powers improved quite a fair bit. At the same time, his majestic divine power burst out wildly from behind him, and in the blink of an eye, a huge golden god shadow was formed. The golden god shadow had then increased in volume and risen to 900 feet from Jian Wushuang's realm improvement. The 900 feet of golden god shadow was very close to the divine god of punishment second stage and could assist Jian Wushuang in his strength improvement. Using two major secret techniques simultaneously, Jian Wushuang's overall strength instantly rose to a whole new level. Now, I can have a good fight with all of you. Jian Wushuang raised his head. His sharp eyes met the three ultimate gods above. Under his gaze, the three ultimate gods felt a tremendous pressure on them. This brat's divine power breath seems to have improved. Fan Zhenxian commented. I felt it too. The golden god shadow of his seems to be powerful as well. And Junzhu looked solemn. No matter what trump card he has, we have three ultimate gods join forces. It should be enough to put up a fight. How can we be afraid of him? Lei Yichong said coldly. Both Fan Zhenxian and An Junzhu nodded in agreement. At the very next moment, the sword world and dark domain once again oppressed Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. It's that domain again. Do you think I don't have one? Now, I want to see whose domain is stronger. Jian Wushuang waved his large hands and several palm prints were sent directly towards the void ahead. The prison of punishment. Rumbling. The golden divine power suddenly erupted from the golden god shadow and gushed from all directions at a terrifying speed. The surrounding world was originally covered in the dark air current domain of An Junzhu. However, under the crazy impact of the golden divine powers, the dark air currents were retreating. In just an instant, the dark air current domain was shattered by the impact and had completely collapsed. Did he just crush my domain? Even An Junzhu was shocked to see what happened. After her domain collapsed, the golden divine power was still steady going forward, forming a huge golden divine power ocean that engulfed the entire battlefield in the blink of an eye. Thereafter, the golden divine power ocean transformed into a huge golden prison. This is the golden prison? Many various sects' genius disciples were shocked to see the scene. Most of them had seen the golden prison in Saint's tomb. None of the nearly 50 first-class divine demons who tried to kill Jian Wushuang had a chance to escape due to this infamous golden prison. They were either mercilessly slaughtered by Jian Wushuang, or they had to crush their safety token to escape from the tomb. The golden prison had reappeared once again. What was different from before was that the golden prison currently had three great compassionate sects' supreme elders within it. Three ultimate gods. They were trapped inside the golden prison. Lei Yichong, An Junzhu, and Fan Zhenxian looked solemn. They did not take it lightly just because their opponent was a divine demon. Suddenly, boom! Following the control of Jian Wushuang's mind, the golden divine power swept across and acted on the bodies of those three ultimate gods. They instantly felt a huge mountain weighing billions of pounds was on top of them. The oppression had greatly reduced the power they could exert. This domain is much stronger than what I've displayed. And Junzhu said coldly. Be careful. Lei Yichong added. Jian Wushuang, who was under their close observation, made a move. Swoosh. His figure flickered and left two apparitions in the void. The infinite sword intent discharged by Jian Wushuang was like a hungry and ferocious beast as it lurched frantically towards its prey. Look what I've got, screamed Lei Yichong. Black thunderbolts surged out of his body that had soared to a height of 5 meters and formed a black thunderbolt prison of 100 meters diameter from him. He stamped his soul hard and the void under his feet immediately cracked open as he held a large hammer in both palms and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Following that, his two large hammers were flung out. Chapter 2484, Destroyed, 2, Star Thunderbolt Explode. Lei Yichong's eyes flashed with dangerous murderous intent as his two large hammers destroyed the world. Transmigration sword technique, hateful path toward heaven. Jian Wushuang's blood mountain sword swung around fiercely. Boom. The void was directly cut into half. Hate. 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 His sword light wantonly swept through the heaven with unrelenting hatred, and wherever the sword intent went past, it left a trail of ascent towards the way of heaven behind. That was the move that severely wounded Fan Zhenxian earlier. The only difference was Jian Wushuang had superimposed that move with the 7 stars secret technique and divine god of punishment, increasing its power by multiple folds. 2 horrible blows of attacks collided. Head on. Bang. The sword light hit the large hammer's surface and made a ringing sound, causing waves of invisible ripples to spread. The black thunderbolts around Lei Chong instantly dimmed along with the surrounding black thunderbolt prison, which started falling apart. His figure propelled like a cannonball, and finally slammed hard on the golden prison's wall behind him. His divine body trembled and caved in from the impact as he spat out blood. Senior brother Lei Chong was defeated. And Junzhu and Fan Zhenxian were shocked. Without warning, Jian Wushuang appeared next to Junzhu. Junzhu was startled but not flustered. As her figure floated upward, dark air currents appeared in front of her and wrapped around Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang glanced at her coldly and he swept the Blood Mountain sword in his hand around 3 times. Wham! A huge sword net emerged and slashed the dark air currents into pieces. Jian Wushuang took a step and sent out 2 apparitions at the same time to approach Junzhu through the dark air currents. Hum! A vague swordlight swept out. The swordlight was captivating, like something that could only appear in a dreamland. The moment it appeared, space-time seemed to be completely frozen. Space-time sword technique, first form, cutting snow. No good. Junzhu sensed danger. She was the Queen of Darkness, a killer and expert in dealing with fatal blows at perfect timings. However, she was not good at fighting head-on. With Jian Wushuang being so close to her and his horrifying swordsmanship, she knew she could not escape. At the juncture of life and death, Junzhu tried her best to move aside. Fortunately, she managed to avoid the deadly sword. However, Jian Wushuang maneuvered the swordlight across with just a casual flick of his sword and cut through Junzhu's shoulder with the unique samsara strength. Chug! Junzhu's right arm flung out. Senior sister. Not far away, a shocked Fan Zhenxian immediately turned into a stream of light and attacked Jian Wushuang. The green long sword in his hand discharged a shocking power that completely covered Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang glared at Fan Zhenxian before waving his sword in anger and freed himself. He did not use any skills. It was just a plain chopping motion but done with great strength. Clang! The sword intent around Fan Zhenxian faded while his figure was also severely smashed against the gold prison's wall. In the blink of an eye, 3 supreme elders and 3 ultimate gods of the great compassionate sect were defeated. They hardly had any room to struggle before they were destroyed. My hand. Junzhu retreated a distance away. She was shrouded in the darkness again, stared at her right shoulder, and began using her divine power to regrow a new arm. However, she was surprised by the presence of a unique divine power around the wound. It was a unique power called Transformation of Transmigration Law, which made her unable to regrow her arms. Losing an arm had sharply decreased her combat powers. Jian Wushuang acted and was targeting Junzhu. Damn it! Junzhu wore an extremely ugly expression. Just when Jian Wushuang decided to keep hunting Junzhu, a black light appeared without the slightest sign next to him. Jian Wushuang's danger-perceiving abilities allowed him to instantly notice the black light. It was a baby's fist-sized black bead. Although the bead was not big in size, its destructive aura was strong and suffocating. Jian Wushuang's face sank and swerved to the side. Nevertheless, before he could do anything, the black bead exploded. Boom! A terrifying power broke out from within. The power was much stronger than a full-blown attack from Lei Chong. It could actually be as powerful as a blow from a high-level ultimate god. Jian Wushuang was naturally hit by its mighty power since he was so near to the black bead, causing his body to be completely plunged into the violent force. In the void not far away, Lei Chong rose to his feet again. He looked rather embarrassed with a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, but his eyes were fixed on Jian Wushuang. I didn't expect Jian Wushuang to be so powerful. He crushed me in a head-on battle. He's much faster than junior sister Junzhu. His sword skills seem to be a bit more advanced than junior brother Fan Zhenxian. The most important thing is the secret techniques he possesses are terrifying, especially that domain which he is putting on display at this moment. I can't properly utilize my strength under this domain's limitation. In summary, even if his overall combat power is not comparable to an ultimate god's, it was infinitely close. This black bead is a life-saving weapon which I paid a huge price to refine. Its power may be equivalent to an ultimate god's attack, but it's impossible to kill him with just one bead. Lei Chong's face turned cold and immediately yelled out, "Junior sister and Junju, junior brother Fan Zhenxian, come here now." The single-armed and Junju and the severely wounded and pale Fan Zhenxian rushed to Lei Chong's side without hesitation. Lei Chong then flipped his hand and took out an identical black bead, but this time he did not aim at the void where Jian Wushuang was. Instead, he aimed it toward the golden prison's wall. The black bead instantly exploded when it hit the wall. The terrifying power was concentrated at one tiny spot that even the stiff golden prison's wall could not resist. With a loud bang, a big hole was blasted on the golden prison's wall. "Go!" Lei Chong screamed as he escaped from the golden prison with An Junju and Fan Zhenxian. At the same time, Jian Wushuang, who was at the golden prison center, had also broken free from the thunderbolt bead's explosion and he chased after the trio. Chapter 2485, 100,000-fold Payback. On the glade far and wide, a huge golden prison was suspended in mid-air. The various sects' experts could only hear the horrifying peal of thunder from the prison but had no idea what was happening in it. With a loud bang, a huge hole blasted through one of the golden prison's corners and three piteous figures shot out from the hole at their fastest speed to the distant heaven. The golden prison completely disappeared after the trio escaped. The golden divine power had also dissipated and revealed a figure in the golden prison's center. Jian Wushuang looked magnificent and stunning with his sword in one hand and the 900 feet tall golden god shadow behind him. In the void at a distance, the three piteous ultimate gods had lost their tyrannical posture. Lei Chong, his face was quite pale with blood dripping from the corners of his mouth while the black thunderbolts around his body dimmed. Fan Zhenxian, his breath was extremely weak while the sword intent surrounding him was decadent. The worst was An Junju. Although she was still shrouded in darkness, everyone noticed her missing arm. The three ultimate gods were extremely miserable. On the other hand, there were no signs of defeat or disadvantages on Jian Wushuang. In fact, the aura emanating from him was much stronger than before. Looking at the brutal contrast, the various sects' experts instantly understood the battle's outcome. The three ultimate gods joined forces and lost. Everyone was shocked and speechless. Of course, a small number of them were starting to get somewhat used to this familiar scene. Starting from the opening of Saint's tomb up to where they were, Jian Wushuang had proven his strength through multiple battles, rising from an unknown figure to someone terrifying. There was a massacre in the tomb and almost no one thought he could survive being besieged by many genius disciples, but he survived. Facing the siege of nearly 50 first-class divine demon disciples, including several 12 minor kings, everyone thought he was dead meat. However, the nearly 50 genius disciples were defeated by him. He was peerless throughout his time in the tomb. After Jian Wushuang came out of the tomb, the various sects' experts had joined forces to kill him. Everyone thought that Jian Wushuang was bound to die. In conclusion, he instantly killed Tu Chen Cheng before killing Han Yun and 3 other peak divine demons who fought against him in a formation. At that time, everyone was appalled by his capabilities. Thereafter, Supreme Elder Fan Zhenxian of the Great Compassion sect challenged him to a duel. Again, everyone thought no matter how strong Jian Wushuang was, he would not be able to do much before an ultimate god, but Fan Zhenxian was defeated by Jian Wushuang to everyone's astonishment. Up until his latest battle, 3 ultimate gods fought against Jian Wushuang, yet those ultimate gods were defeated. It was a miracle. Jian Wushuang had created multiple nearly impossible miracles within a few months' time since the opening of Saint's tomb. Genius, demon, or even monster were no longer appropriate words to describe Jian Wushuang. Many experts had then looked at Jian Wushuang like looking at a truly omnipotent god. And at that very moment, The omnipotent godlike young man in their eyes was advancing forward step by step with his sword pointed up at the heavens. As he slowly approached those three ultimate gods, there was a sneer on his face. "You three ultimate gods sure escaped fast." The trio felt extremely ashamed upon hearing his claim. Three ultimate gods joined forces against one divine demon, and yet they were defeated altogether to the point they had to play their trump card to escape from the golden prison. That was truly embarrassing. Jian Wushuang stopped, but the jeering smile on his face was bigger than ever. "You can run, but you can't hide. If the three of you escape, what about the remaining Great Compassion Sect's genius disciples? And how could your Great Compassion Sect tame my anger?" Lei Yichong and the other two ultimate gods were startled when Jian Wushuang said so. On the glade, Great Compassion Sect's genius disciples such as Long Zishan and Yu Aoqing were bitterly disappointed. They discovered Jian Wushuang was very close to them. If Jian Wushuang took his anger out on them, they could possibly be instantly killed by Jian Wushuang with no room to struggle, as they were only disciples in the divine demon realm. Even Long Zishan and Yu Aoqing would never have any chance of surviving when facing Jian Wushuang. "Jian Wushuang, what exactly do you want to do?" Lei Yichong shouted loudly. "What am I going to do? You have to ask yourself this question." Jian Wushuang's voice became cold. "From the moment I stepped into the tomb, I did nothing wrong and had not provoked anyone. Despite that, the genius disciples in the tomb came after me again and again. First, Pang Dao forced me to surrender the sword principal opportunities that I've earned. After that, Pang Dao wanted to put me to death in the fight for the position token. Out of no choice, I had killed him. Subsequently, the Great Compassion Sect's genius disciples went berserk and wanted to kill me madly. Even after I came out of the tomb, your Great Compassion Sect was among the first to attack me. Tu Chen Cheng, the four great peak divine demons, and lastly you three supreme elders. Have I ever provoked any of you? Now, isn't it ridiculous for you to ask me what I wanted to do?" Jian Wushuang's voice echoed throughout the glade and shook the heavens. The various sects' experts wore a strange look on their faces when they heard that. They thought about it carefully and seemed that it was as Jian Wushuang had said, he did not provoke anyone. On the other hand, it was those greedy people who had actively sought trouble with Jian Wushuang. Apart from the Great Compassion Sect's disciples, other various sects' disciples were also beheaded by Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang came out of the tomb, it was Tu Chen Cheng and the others who picked a fight with Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had been passive and merely fought for his life. In fact, Jian Wushuang suffered a big loss. In the distant void, those three ultimate gods were unsteady as they knew they were at fault. Lei Yichong's voice eased. "Jian Wushuang, this incident may have been started by the Great Compassion Sect, but you have killed many of our disciples who are genius disciples." Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. "So what? I believe in the principle of doing good unto people who are good. If anyone offends me, I will pay back 100 or even 1,000 times worse." Chapter 2486. Explanation. Didn't you ask what I want to do? Let me tell you now. Jian Wushuang's voice was cold as it echoed throughout the world. "Listen, I want you to think carefully after you go back and give me an explanation which satisfies me and relieves me of anger. Otherwise, you'll have to pay the Great Compassion Sect a visit in person to ask for it. You may have a strong background, so strong I may not be able to do anything against you. However, mark my words, as long as my anger persists, I'll stay at the Great Compassion Sect's entrance and kill anyone who steps out of the sect until the last disciple and expert." "How dare you!" Lei Yichong yelled furiously. Jian Wushuang smiled coldly. "Try me. In addition, my patience is limited. I'll give you 1 month's time at most. Within a month, if the Great Compassion Sect fails to give me a satisfactory explanation, I will do as I've said." Lei Yichong's face was pale. "Very well. Let's wait and see. Go," Lei Yichong yelled. The Great Compassion Sect's three ultimate gods as well as their disciples Long Zishan, Yu Aoqing, and the others, did not linger around and soon left. Jian Wushuang watched the Great Compassion Sect and the others leave without stopping them. After the Great Compassionate's people had left, Jian Wushuang turned around and was about to leave, but stopped abruptly after taking 2 steps. By the way, I remember when I walked out of the tomb, the Great Compassion sect was not the only sect who wanted to attack me. Jian Wushuang razor-sharp eyes swept across the remaining sect's experts around. The complexion of those experts instantly turned pale. Even Great Compassion sect's 3 ultimate gods who stepped up could not do any harm to Jian Wushuang and were defeated. If Jian Wushuang were going to get even with the other sects, it would most probably end up. Humph, all of you who planned or had your disciples to do something to me in the tomb when I had a bounty. I remember all of them, so you better think about how to calm my anger. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang sneered and his laughter made those experts' scalps numb. Jian Wushuang ignored those sects and slowly walked in the direction where Narcissus Island's people were. In the void where Narcissus Island's disciples were located, Elder Linghe and the 7th Elder were trembling. Elder Linghe subconsciously came forward to greet him upon seeing Jian Wushuang's approach. Jian Wushuang, Elder Linghe spoke, only to find that Jian Wushuang was not interested in her. He merely walked past her and appeared in front of Elder Wujian. Brother Wujian, nothing happened to my parents, right? Jian Wushuang asked with a smile. His attitude towards Elder Wujian remained gentle, and because he was no longer a disciple of Narcissus Island, he did not address Wujian as an elder. Instead, he addressed Wujian as Brother Wujian, which was also quite cordial. Don't worry, my friend. Your parents are safe, said Wujian. Thank you, Brother Wujian. I'm going back to Anzhou Commandery now. You can let my parents go back too, said Jian Wushuang. All right. Wujian nodded slightly. If you ever come to Anzhou Commandery in the future, you can visit me. Jian Wushuang smiled. Definitely. Wujian was touched. After that, Jian Wushuang glanced at Zhongyi, Su Tong, Wei Yiqing, Xiao Heng, and the other disciples behind Wujian. He nodded politely and turned around. Big sister, I'm going back to Blazing Moon City now. Do you want to go together? Jian Wushuang asked with a smile. At the ancient star temple, Zhuobing immediately stood up. Yes, I haven't been back to see our parents for a long time. Zhuobing rushed towards Jian Wushuang. The ancient star temple elders and Ling Dan did not hold her back anymore. Let's go. Jian Wushuang and Zhuobing set off to leave, heading to the Blazing Moon City in Anzhou Commandery. The various sects experts who were present exchanged looks and felt complicated. Especially the 2 Narcissus Island elders, Elder Linghe and the 7th Elder. After Jian Wushuang walked out of the tomb, Jian Wushuang did not even glance at the 2 of them, let alone greet or speak to them. We shouldn't have made a decision so quickly. We should have waited longer for Jian Wushuang to come out of the tomb and observe his true strength before making a decision. Elder Linghe's face was distorted in anguish. No, the Lord was not wrong in making a timely decision. Only then can Narcissus Island not be implicated, but what we didn't expect is that Jian Wushuang's strength has improved so much after his trip to the tomb. Even the 3 Great Compassion sect's supreme elders were defeated by him. The 7th Elder clicked her lips. They felt sorry for Narcissus Island. What a terrible loss of a genius. A divine demon who could defeat 3 ultimate gods at the same time. His combat power might have easily surpassed the Lord of Narcissus Island. Jian Wushuang was still young with huge potential. His future was bright and limitless. How great if such a genius disciple belonged to Narcissus Island. Although Jian Wushuang was only an outer disciple and did not have much sense of belonging in Narcissus Island, if they did their best, even if it were only symbolic to help him instead of chasing him out, perhaps Jian Wushuang would have felt very differently towards Narcissus Island. His sense of belonging might even have improved. Sadly, they had sent this superior demon away. Of course, they were regretful. On the side, Elder Wujian sneered, do you know how stupid the decision was? You are stupid and so is the Lord. You don't even know how incredible Jian Wushuang is, nor try to see his potential before making a decision. What's the point of regretting it now? It's useless. Jian Wushuang no longer belongs to Narcissus Island. Both Elder Linghe and the 7th Elder were even more ashamed after hearing Elder Wujian's words. They could not but feel helpless when they thought of what could have been a better outcome. After Jian Wushuang left, The experts and genius disciples of the various sects on the glade also left one after another. Many sects left in a hurry as Jian Wushuang had made it clear to them. Those sects who had taken action against Jian Wushuang were on pins and needles. They must return to their sects immediately and discuss with their leaders how to deal with this matter. The trip to Saint's tomb finally ended. Chapter 2487, Going home on the way back to Anzhou Commandery. Little brother, did you really defeat those 3 supreme elders of the Great Compassion sect? Little brother, how on earth did you cultivate your skills? Father sent me a message a long time ago, saying your sword skill is unparalleled in the world. I didn't believe it much at that time, but now, Zhuo Bing was talking non-stop while walking alongside Jian Wushuang. She was obviously impressed by her little brother's strength. Jian Wushuang was rather patient with his relatives and hence briefly responded to her questions. By the way, little brother, if the Great Compassion sect hasn't given you an explanation after a month, will you really pay them a visit? Zhuo Bing looked over quizzically. Jian Wushuang smiled. Of course I will, since I have already said so, I will definitely not break my promise. However, the Great Compassionate sect is recognized as the top sect of Wuxia Wilderness after all. Its background and strength should not be taken lightly. Zhuo Bing frowned. I know. I've absolute confidence to handle them since I've decided to do so. Big sister, don't worry. I'm not bragging. There may be some experts in Wuxia Wilderness who can beat me, but there are almost none who can kill me, Jian Wushuang said with a smile. He was not bragging. His divine body was extremely powerful from being a perfect chaotic creature. He had the perfect immortal body, making it impossible to kill him even if an undying saint tried to. Generally, the ultimate gods were the strongest in Wuxia Wilderness. Even when many ultimate gods combined their strength, they could pose no harm to him since they were unable to kill him. Jian Wushuang knew there was a mysterious expert in the Wuxia Wilderness when he mentioned almost none. Daoist Shen Shun, the Daoist who visited Blazing Moon City when he was born, calculated his birth chart, and bestowed him the name Jian Wushuang. If there was anyone capable of killing him in the Wuxia Wilderness, Daoist Shen Shun would be one of them. We're home. Jian Wushuang was pleased. After journeying for a few days, Zhuo Bing and Jian Wushuang finally arrived at Blazing Moon City. The two immediately went toward the governor's mansion. At the gate of the governor's mansion, whoosh, 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 4 figures flew out of the mansion and appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Pleasure to meet Master Jian Wushuang. The 4 of them respectfully saluted Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang studied the 4 people in front of him. Those 4 people were second-class divine demons. They must be the ones sent by Elder Wu Jian to protect his parents. The 4 had already sent Shui Yunfeng and his wife to a safe place but returned to Blazing Moon City due to Jian Wushuang's return. Although Elder Wu Jian is an elder of Narcissus Island, it's remarkable he can mobilize 4 second-class divine demons based on his personal abilities. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly and immediately waved his hand. 4 interspatial rings appeared in front of those 4 people. Thank you very much for your help. There are a lot of resources in these interspatial rings. Please take them as my gratitude. You may leave and return to Narcissus Island now that I'm here, said Jian Wushuang with a smile. The 4 second-class divine demons took those interspatial rings and took a quick glance inside it. They were overjoyed to discover its contents. Jian Wushuang had killed many genius disciples in the tomb, and among them were many first-class divine demons. He also killed the 5 peak divine demons such as Tu Chen Cheng outside the tomb. He was rich from making a fortune out of their belongings. The 4 second-class divine demons were extremely pleased to receive the gifts from Jian Wushuang. Master, well now leave. The 4 second-class divine demons left soon after. Jian Wushuang and Zhuo Bing stepped into the governor's mansion. As soon as they were in the mansion, Jian Wushuang immediately spotted Shui Yunfeng and Luo Xinqin who were welcoming them from the inner courtyard. Father, mother. Zhuo Bing ran over immediately. Binja. Zhuo Yunfeng and Luo Xinqin were very happy. Father, mother. I'm home, Jian Wushuang called out gently. I heard from those 4 masters that you've encountered some troubles and was forced to secretly evacuate us. Your mother and I have been worrying about you. Has the trouble been resolved now? Zhuo Yunfeng looked over. Almost, replied Jian Wushuang. Father, little brother is amazing. His strength is even more impressive. We don't have to worry about anything with him around. Zhuo Bing comforted. Oh. Zhuo Yunfeng looked curious. Don't listen to big sister. She is exaggerating. As long as I'm around, I'll never let my relatives suffer. Jian Wushuang promised. Zhuo Yunfeng and Luo Xinqin looked at each other and were quite relieved upon hearing that. Luo Xinqin had figured Jian Wushuang's real origins. She suspected Jian Wushuang might be a reincarnated person. However, whether Jian Wushuang was a reincarnated person or otherwise did not matter to them, as they were content with Jian Wushuang willingly considered them as his parents. Come, let's go in and talk. It so happens Peng'er sent me a message yesterday, saying he will be back in a few days. We will have a reunion soon, said Zhuo Yunfeng. Second brother is coming back. Jian Wushuang raised his brows and a smile appeared on his face. 3 days later, Zhuo Peng returned from the Icefire God Palace. The family had finally reunited and had a family dinner. At the family dinner, Zhuo Peng told his parents everything that had happened to Jian Wushuang in Saint's tomb. He even asked Jian Wushuang directly, Third brother, I heard from several seniors at Icefire God Palace that you killed a lot of various sects' genius disciples in the tomb and those sects were angry. However, none of them could do anything to you. Even the ultimate gods who attempted to do so were defeated, right? Jian Wushuang was speechless. Ultimate gods? Zhuo Yunfeng was taken aback and immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. Husband, what are ultimate gods? Luo Xinqin asked. Ultimate gods are super experts in Wuxia wilderness. They are above the divine demon realm. I heard many top sects leaders in Wuxia wilderness, such as Lord of Great Compassion Sect and Lord of Narcissus Island, are ultimate gods, said Zhuo Yunfeng. What? Luo Xinqin was startled and immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. She was still in shock when she said, Shuang'er, did you really defeated those ultimate gods? I merely engaged a few duels with them. It was not as exaggerated as what second brother said. Jian Wushuang touched his nose and smiled lightly. Even then, Zhuo Yunfeng and Luo Xinqin were still shocked. My son, Zhuo Yunfeng was amazed but was able to understand after considering Luo Xinqin's speculations. Just when Jian Wushuang and his family were reunited, a sudden huge explosion was heard in Wuxia wilderness. The Lord of Great Compassion Sect who spent years in retreat came out. Chapter 2488. The Lord pays a visit. The Lord of Great Compassion Sect, the true leader of the Great Compassion Sect. The 3 supreme elders, Lei Chong, and Zhun Zhu, and Fan Zhenxian also held extremely high status in the Great Compassion Sect. However, the true and sovereign leader of the Great Compassion Sect was ultimately the Lord. He was also recognized as the strongest expert in the Wuxia wilderness, a genuine high-level ultimate god. The Lord had spent many years in retreat such that most daily management of the Great Compassion Sect was handed over to the 3 supreme elders. The Lord had finally returned from his retreat. It happened right after the 3 supreme elders of Great Compassion Sect were defeated head-on by Jian Wushuang. The true reason for the Lord's return was clear. On the second day of his return, he and the 3 ultimate gods left Great Compassion Sect and headed towards Anzhou Commandery. News traveled and caused an uproar in Wuxia wilderness. In Anzhou Commandery, hidden in an underground dark palace, several figures headed by Governor Bai Yu stood waiting respectfully. Behind Bai Yu were patriarchs of the 6 top families in Anzhou Commandery, some of which Jian Wushuang knew, such as Lin Taifeng, head of the Lin family, Zhuge Yuanchong, head of the Zhuge family, and Xiong Zong, head of Xiong family. Those people, including Bai Yu, were all waiting for someone. They stood there patiently waiting, with none dared to complain of any dissatisfactions they may have. After a long period of time, a bright light lit up at the palace's center and a spatial wormhole slowly came into sight. They are here. Bai Yu's expression became more alert and respectful than before. The light gradually dimmed and 4 figures stepped out of the spatial wormhole. Among those 4 people was a handsome middle-aged man who was dressed in a loose long robe, apart from Lei Chong, and Junju, and Fan Zhenxian. This middle-aged man had stubbles on his chin and was giving off the impression of someone with a warm personality. Angius Governor, Bai Yu. It's my pleasure to meet all of you. Bai Yu and the 6 family heads behind him immediately bowed and saluted. Are you the governor? The handsome middle-aged man glanced at Bai Yu. Bai Yu shuddered under his gaze as if he was fully exposed. Lead me to Jian Wushuang, said the handsome middle-aged man casually. Yes, please follow me. Bai Yu immediately led the way. The 6 top family heads were grim and proper. They knew the identities of those 4 people very well. Any one of those 4 people could easily wipe out the 6 top families and even the entire Anzhou commandery with just a wave of their hand. Under the guidance of Bai Yu, it took them some time before arriving at the Blazing Moon City where Jian Wushuang was. My lord, this is Blazing Moon City. Jian Wushuang's father is the city's governor. Jian Wushuang is currently staying in Blazing Moon City, Bai Yu reported. The handsome middle-aged man nodded slightly, but his eyes were examining the surrounding void. Haha, quite a few people are here. The handsome-looking middle-aged man faintly laughed, but his voice could be heard throughout the void. Behind the handsome middle-aged man, those 3 ultimate gods including Lei Chong looked extremely cold. As an ultimate god, his perception abilities were extremely sensitive and he naturally felt the presence of those people hiding in the void. Most of those people were spies from various sects, some of which were the sect's experts, and even a few sect lords were among them. Oh, that person's here too? The handsome middle-aged man was surprised. As far as his soul power could reach, he could see an elegant green-robed man standing in the void not far away. Behind the elegant green-robed man were Narcissus Island's elders such as Elder Linghe and Elder Wujian. The elegant green-robed man was no other than the remarkable Ling Gong, Lord of Narcissus Island. Jian Wushuang was from Narcissus Island. What a pity. The handsome middle-aged man secretly shook his head. My lord, Jian Wushuang is in the governor's mansion. I'll bring him out now, said Bai Yu. No need. The handsome middle-aged man waved his hand and turned serious. Yun Zhen from the Great Compassion sect is here to visit my friend, Jian Wushuang. A magnificent voice came from the handsome middle-aged man which echoed throughout the entire Blazing Moon City. Anyone who was at any corner of Blazing Moon City could clearly hear the voice. In the governor's mansion, Jian Wushuang's family had gathered together. Jian Wushuang was holding a cup of tea in his hands. When the handsome middle-aged man's voice echoed throughout Blazing Moon City, Jian Wushuang's eyes focused as he put down the teacup. Little brother, Yun Zhan is, Zhuobing frowned and looked over. If I'm not mistaken, he should be Lord of Great Compassion sect. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly. Earlier, he received a message from Wujian about the Lord of Great Compassionate sect had come out from his retreat and was heading over to meet Jian Wushuang. The Lord of Great Compassion sect. Zhuobing, Zhuopeng, and Zhuo Yunfeng were taken aback. The Great Compassion sect was the recognized top sect in Wuxia Wilderness. It was not hard to imagine the status Lord of Great Compassion sect had. Shuang'er. Luo Xinqin looked at Jian Wushuang worriedly. He's just a high-level ultimate god, it's no big deal. Father and mother, just wait here for a while. I'll be back. Big sister, second brother, please stay by father and mother's side, said Jian Wushuang. Sure. Zhuobing and Zhuopeng both nodded their heads. They knew they were unable to help Jian Wushuang at all. After Jian Wushuang made the arrangements, he departed towards the void above Blazing Moon City. 2 apparitions flashed past, and Jian Wushuang soon appeared before the Great Compassion sect lord in the blink of an eye. Jian Wushuang studied the handsome middle-aged man. Is he the Lord of Great Compassion sect? Jian Wushuang stared at the handsome middle-aged man while his eyes rolled around in deep thoughts. In any case, he could see the other party was a high-level ultimate god, which is incomparable to ordinary ultimate gods like Lei Chong and Fan Zhenxian. Are you Jian Wushuang? That handsome middle-aged man also stared at Jian Wushuang. His eyes were flashing with a strange luster as he attempted to read Jian Wushuang's expression but unfortunately failed. Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. Yes, I am. Is Lord Yun Zhen here to give me an explanation? The Great Compassion Sect is the recognized top sect in Wuxia Wilderness. If you want us to give you an explanation, you must first prove your strength. It's useless even though you have previously defeated the 3 Supreme Elders, said Yun Zhen solemnly. I wonder how Lord Yun Zhen wants me to prove myself. Jian Wushuang smiled. It's very simple. Yun Zhen raised his hand and stretched out 3 fingers, just accept 3 of my palm strikes. Chapter 2489, 3 palm strikes. Withstand 3 palm strikes from you? Jian Wushuang smiled. He had speculated earlier a tyrannical sect like the Great Compassion Sect would not bow down to him easily. However, the Lord of Great Compassion Sect was more cunning when dealing with issues. He asked Jian Wushuang to withstand 3 palm strikes from him as a means to test Jian Wushuang's strength. If Jian Wushuang was not strong enough, he would die under the 3 palm strikes and the problem would be resolved. However, if those 3 palm strikes had neither killed nor injured Jian Wushuang, Yun Zhen planned on making an excuse to retreat so as to avoid getting humiliated. One could not help but to admit that, as the Lord of Great Compassion Sect who made the sect flourish for many years, Yun Zhen was good at dealing with matters. Very well, I'll take on your 3 palm strikes, said Jian Wushuang while nodding. Right here? Yun Zhen asked. Sure. Let's do it high up in the sky to avoid disturbing the city below, said Jian Wushuang. Yun Zhen nodded. Very well. Here comes the first strike. Immediately after his voice faded, a majestic breath of divine powers began to gather within his palm. Everyone around was stunned at that divine power breath was a few times more powerful than a regular ultimate god's. As divine powers gathered to a certain point, Yun Zhen's right hand turned into a warm jade before striking forward at the void. The strike seemed so nonchalant, but instantly stirred up a world of its own. Boom! A heaven-shaking energy began forming. A tall crystallized palm that covered half of Blazing Moon City formed out of thin air. The crystallized palm crushed the void and everything it came across before striking directly at Jian Wushuang. When the palm appeared, countless cultivators in Blazing Moon City raised their heads in shock and desperation. If that palm was to strike down on Blazing Moon City, the entire city would turn into ashes. Jian Wushuang was calmly watching that palm striking heading toward him. He shifted his body and swung out with the Blood Mountain sword in his hand. A blurry, almost dreamy sword shadow swept outward. The sword light swept toward the crystallized palm and sliced it apart right in the middle with a shattering noise. A complete trace of sword slash appeared and the palm was sliced into 2 halves. Large amounts of shattered crystallized divine power began to fan outwards, causing the void to suddenly become very colorful. However, both divine power and sword essence were confined in the skies, therefore not affecting Blazing Moon City at all. It's proven that you have good battle strength since you're able to shatter the charged palm strike containing 70% of my strength so easily, but watch out for the next one. I'll be using all of my powers. It's an ultimate secret technique that I created myself, said Yun Zhen. One just come toward me. Jian Wushuang smiled with excitement shining in his eyes. Yun Zhen squinted as surges of divine power began to gather in his palm again, but this time it was more expanded and powerful than before. A thin layer of red light appeared on the surface of his body as his palm gradually became blood red. With the power charged to its maximum, the blood-red palm was suddenly sent outwards. Giant devil ape! Yun Zhen yelled out sharply. Boom! The heavens and earth shook. The ever-expanding red light lashed out together with the palm and began to crystallize. It formed a huge object in the blink of an eye. It was a several hundred meters tall, fierce-looking giant devil ape. The devil ape had blood-red eyes while swinging its pair of thick, strong arms. Its upward roar caused ripples between heaven and earth before its body burst straight towards Jian Wushuang. There were terrifying energies pressing against Jian Wushuang. Perhaps even early-stage ultimate gods such as Lei Chong and Fan Zhenxian would have failed to block such an attack. The Lord of Great Compassion Sect is truly a high-level ultimate god. His abilities are truly remarkable. Jian Wushuang was exclaiming in his mind as he watched the giant devil ape charging at him. However, in the next moment, the stellar strength within his body began to violently rise. Using the stellar strength within, Jian Wushuang's energy had surged a great deal, so did his strength, which had also increased immensely. He held tightly on Blood Mountain's sword, which was making waves of neighing sounds before taking a leap. Jian Wushuang nonchalantly swung the sword sideways. Just a nonchalant swing without swordlight or sword shadows bursting out. There were no ripples either. The void in front of him was calm as well. However, under the calmness, a gigantic swordlight appeared out of nowhere. The swordlight, as if connecting heaven and earth, was extremely bright and captivating. The moment it appeared, it became the core of heaven and earth, the focal point of it. It had even turned eternal. Throughout the oceans and wilderness, heaven and earth aligned. The swordlight appeared before the giant devil ape, following a string of whipping noises. The giant devil ape roared maniacally and lashed out violently with its two arms. Boom! A terrifying rumble suddenly filled the air. The entire void was trembling as shapeless airwaves swirled up and swept in from multiple directions. Finally, the giant devil ape was completely dissolved and the swordlight which Jian Wushuang unleashed had disappeared as well. Jian Wushuang's body shook as he took a small step backward. As for Yun Zhan, he did not retreat even a bit, since Jian Wushuang was slightly below his skill level. To be able to take my palm strike just now proves you're already above the 3 supreme elders of Great Compassion sect. However, what I'm going to unleash next is my most powerful creation and also my deadliest strike. It's called Crimson Elephants. Yun Zhan's voice was cold as his hands had not even stopped for a while as he issued his third palm strike right after Jian Wushuang took his second. Boom! Heaven and earth shook again as blood mist exploded into the air immediately after that. The entire void above Blazing Moon City had turned crimson as though it was inside an ocean of blood. Powerful energies were gathered at the center of the blood ocean. A total of 3 gigantic creatures were formed within a moment. This time it was not giant devil apes that were formed, but 3 larger crimson elephants. The crimson elephants were over 100 meters tall, incomparably huge, and were projecting deadly energy from their bodies. After they were formed, the 3 crimson elephants trumpeted loudly before charging fiercely toward Jian Wushuang. Judging from the crimson elephant's momentum, even a mountain would be shattered into pieces, let alone a mere person. Jian Wushuang's face turned stern, but the excitement in his eyes was burning even brighter. Behind him, a great deal of golden-colored divine power was swirling. 1,000 meters tall golden god shadow was formed. Chapter 2490. Sit and talk. Jian Wushuang wore a cold expression as a powerful battle essence surged from his body. With his sword pointing forward, the energy from the endless cycle began to burst out. Hate! 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 The sword lights that swept out were filled with hatred as it slashed through the void with sword essences filling up everywhere it passed by as if charting a way to heaven. 2 secret techniques, 7 Stars Secret Technique and Divine God of Punishment, were mustering in full force and unleashed the most powerful sword technique which Jian Wushuang self-created, Hateful Path Toward Heaven. Jian Wushuang had unleashed his abilities to its extreme with that strike. In the blink of an eye, a sword light filled with infinite hatred collided with the 3 crimson elephants. Boom! Like the collision of 2 worlds, the boundless blood ocean was almost completely turned over. A pervasive crimson color formed from the terrifying crimson windstorm shrouded the entire void where Jian Wushuang was. The various sects experts who were hiding in the surrounding void and those countless cultivators in Blazing Moon City gazed intensely at the eye of the crimson windstorm. Yun Zhan was also staring at the storm when a strange light suddenly flashed in his eyes. With shattering noises, the crimson windstorm was torn open as a silhouette walked out and appeared before everyone's sight. You're truly the Lord of Great Compassion sect. Your abilities are remarkable. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and was secretly in awe. He had lost in the last clash. The energies of those 3 crimson elephants were extremely powerful. It had utterly crushed his sword technique and impacted his body. Jian Wushuang's recovery abilities were incredible, hence he did not get seriously injured. However, he was sure that any regular ultimate god experts such as Fan Zhenxian or An Junju would be doomed if they took the Crimson Elephants head-on. The battle strength of a high-leveled ultimate god was truly impressive. Although Jian Wushuang could fend off Lei Chong, An Junju, and Fan Zhenxian's joint attack, they were far from being a high-leveled ultimate god. Jian Wushuang was impressed by Yun Zhen's ability while Yun Zhen was staring at him intensely. That palm strike of mine has completely crushed his sword technique and directly impacted his body, but he isn't even a bit injured in the end. With such physical defensive capabilities, it won't be enough to kill him even if my abilities were twice as strong, Yun Zhen thought to himself. Jian Wushuang, my little friend. You've endured 3 palm strikes from me. Now, we can sit and talk. Yun Zhen waved his hand as he was speaking, causing a table and 2 chairs to appear in the void ahead. Please. Yun Zhen extended his hand. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate. His figure flashed and sat on one of those chairs. Yun Zhen sat on the other chair with his eyes gazing at the surrounding void. My friends from various sects, you don't need to hide anymore. Please show yourselves. Following his words, many various sects experts who were hiding in the surrounding void showed their faces. Some were even lords of certain sects as all of them stood in the void around the table. Haha, quite an audience here. Jian Wushuang intriguingly looked at them. His soul had power scanned through all of them and realized the 4 great ultimate gods of Great Compassion sect and 2 other ultimate gods, with one of them being Lord of Narcissus Island. The sects that you have gone against certainly are not few. Shall all of us sit down and resolve the issue since they are here? Yun Zhen said quietly. How should it be resolved? Jian Wushuang looked at Yun Zhen. We and the various sects are truly in the wrong by provoking you, as you only reacted accordingly. The Great Compassion sect and all the other sects should naturally apologize to you. In addition, if you have any requests, please don't hesitate to bring it up, my little friend. Well, not decline so long it's within our abilities, said Yun Zhen. Yun Zhen was undeniably very sincere. The sincerity shown did not only surprise Jian Wushuang. In fact, the various sects experts including Lei Chong and several supreme elders were equally surprised. The Great Compassion sect was the first-ranked sect in Wuxia Wilderness. It had an extremely strong foundation and had always been extremely high-handed when dealing with matters. Yun Zhen, as a sect lord, was naturally filled with tricks. However, why did Yun Zhen suddenly show humility and apologize to the other party? Even though Jian Wushuang had endured his 3 palm strikes, surely it need not have come to that. My lord, Lei Chong, and Junju, and Fan Zhenxian secretly sent inquiry messages. I can't kill this Jian Wushuang and he naturally can't touch me either, judging from his current abilities. He's still far from being a threat toward the Great Compassion sect. However, don't forget how young he's right now. According to the intelligence we've gathered, he's only in his early 20s. He could survive my attacks at merely his early 20s and a second-class divine demon to boot. Can you imagine what he would have become if given another 20 years? In other words, if he'd make a breakthrough into first-class, peak divine demon, or even an ultimate god like you, what will happen then? Yun Zhen replied to them. Lei Chong, and Junju, and Fan Zhenxian fell silent. It was true. What was most terrifying about Jian Wushuang was not the ability he currently possessed, as it was still within the Great Compassion sect's capability to control. It was Jian Wushuang's natural talent, potential, and the fact that he had abilities that allowed him to fight someone several levels higher. If he was already so strong as a second-class divine demon, what would happen if he finally became an ultimate god? The 3 supreme elders were not so foolish to assume Jian Wushuang would never make a breakthrough into the ultimate god realm. On the contrary, Jian Wushuang's breakthrough into an ultimate god was almost guaranteed. In fact, there was a huge possibility of him becoming an undying saint. As soon as Jian Wushuang became an ultimate god, it would be child's play for him to annihilate the Great Compassion sect with his level-skipping abilities. The decision has been made. What we should do is to form relations with Jian Wushuang, and we should befriend him if possible. It's always better to have a friend rather than a powerful enemy, said Yun Zhen. The 3 supreme elders agreed and did not argue further after listening to his explanation. Next to the table, Jian Wushuang was sitting there and looking intriguingly at Yunzhen. Yunzhen's reaction was truly out of Jian Wushuang's expectations, but perhaps because of a lord like Yunzhen, the Great Compassion sect could continue to flourish. Jian Wushuang said coldly, "Seeing that Lord Yun has spoken frankly to me, I shall not be ambiguous either. If you want me to cease feeling resentful toward the Great Compassion sect, you'll have to promise me a few things. First of all, I need some materials for my instrument cultivation. I tried finding these materials through other channels previously. Unfortunately, it's so rare I couldn't get my hands on them. The Great Compassion sect has a strong background. Perhaps you can help me with this." Chapter 2491, Conditions Instrument Cultivation Materials. Lei Chong and Zhun Zhu and Fan Zhenxian looked at each other and thought it was not a big deal. The Great Compassion sect was able to provide some cultivation materials, of course. "I wonder what kind of materials are you looking for?" Yunzhen asked. 4 portions of red sun secret essence, 5 red blood fruits, 2 drops of purple shimmer, 100 pieces of spectacular beast scales, and 10,000 pounds of celestial iron ore, said Jian Wushuang. The 3 supreme elders were dumbfounded when they heard his request. Various sects experts were also shocked beyond words. Red sun secret essence, red blood fruit, purple shimmer, spectacular beast scales, and celestial iron ore. All of them were difficult to find. Jian Wushuang was asking that much in one go? Boy, are you trying to put us in an awkward position? All of these are rare materials. Don't tell me you're planning to cultivate a heavenly treasure. Even cultivating regular heavenly treasure doesn't require such rare materials, Lei Chong said in anger. I'm not trying to embarrass the Great Compassion sect. I genuinely need those materials, said Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang planned on using those materials to cultivate his life armor. He requested Wu Jian to look for it before, but he could not find any of them. Don't tell me the Great Compassion sect can't even provide some of the materials. Jian Wushuang jeered. Yunzhen pondered for a while before raising his head and said, "Of the materials you asked, we do have celestial iron ore and red blood fruit and can provide them anytime. As for red sun secret essence, we only have 3 portions, but it shouldn't be hard to find another portion. Spectacular beast scale may prove challenging to obtain. I'm afraid the entire Wuxia wilderness may not even have 100 pieces, but we can use our influence to search for them in other territories. It may take a few months to half a year before we can gather the quantity you asked for. I'm afraid the troublesome one is only the purple shimmer. Can you find it?" Jian Wushuang looked at Yunzhen. He knew that among all those instrument cultivation materials, purple shimmer was the rarest and hardest to find. The Great Compassion sect only has 1 drop of purple shimmer. As for the second drop, I know who has it, but it's not easy to get it from him. However, I'll try my best to ask for it. If I can't get it from him, there's nothing else I can do, said Yunzhen directly. Sure. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly. 2 drops of purple shimmer was what he needed, but being able to get even 1 drop was quite fortuitous, while the second drop would depend solely on luck. Other than these instrument cultivation materials, I would also need some primordial stones, said Jian Wushuang. Primordial stones contained pure divine powers. Every single one of them had an extraordinarily high content of divine powers. In the market, a primordial stone was comparable to about 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power, and that was purely from a conversion aspect. Primordial stones contained the purest form of divine powers. It was even purer than those 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power. Jian Wushuang had tasted the benefit before in divine power ocean within Saint's Tomb, so he wanted to rely on his terrifying absorption speed and tempering of divine powers to raise his cultivation stage. Naturally, he needs to have enough divine powers to do so. Absorbing and tempering divine powers from primordial stones were more convenient and effective than absorbing ancient god divine power. How many primordial stones do you need? Yunzhen looked over. Not many, 10,000 would suffice, said Jian Wushuang. 10,000? Yunzhen was dumbfounded. Jian Wushuang, How dare you to say that 10,000 primordial stones is not many? Lei Chong immediately roared. Why? Is that a lot? Jian Wushuang looked strange. The primordial stones was a request he made according to his needs. He had just reached the second-class divine demon and needed a huge amount of divine powers to upgrade himself into a first-class divine demon. He estimated that 10,000 primordial stones would be enough to make a breakthrough, hence the request. However, it seemed like he had asked too much. Jian Wushuang, the number of primordial stones you ask for is truly too many. You need to know that the market value for a single piece of primordial stone is equivalent to 10,000 ancient god divine power. Many peak divine demons couldn't afford it even after using up all their wealth. Even though the Great Compassion Sect has an extraordinary foundation and is the first-ranked sect in Wuxia Wilderness, it's impossible to present 10,000 pieces of primordial stones in one go, said Yun Zhan. Lei Chong was hot-headed and immediately growled coldly. Even when making an offering every millennium to the territorial lord of wilderness, the Great Compassion Sect only offers up to 1,000 primordial stones. Who are you to ask that many from us? Shut up. Yun Zhan glancing at Lei Chong. Lei Chong held his tongue despite feeling furious. Yun Zhan was quite kind to Jian Wushuang, but that was out of necessity. Normally, he was extremely overbearing to others. Although Lei Chong was a supreme elder, he was still very respectful and fearful of Yun Zhan. It looks like my requests are a bit overboard, said Jian Wushuang anxiously. Yun Zhan looked at him again. What do you think about this, Jian Wushuang? There are many sects that have offended you. The Great Compassion Sect will discuss with them and offer you 3,000 pieces of primordial stones. The Great Compassion Sect could at most only offer 3,000 primordial stones after discussing it with the other sects. If the request for 3,000 primordial stones were solely directed at the Great Compassion Sect, it would have been a huge loss. Jian Wushuang nodded. That's fine. I have one last request. Do tell. Yun Zhan was being very patient. Lord Yun Zhan would have probably guessed I would be leaving Wuxia Wilderness soon and adventure to other territories, but I'm afraid that as soon as I leave Wuxia Wilderness, the safety of my family could be at stake. Hence, my last request toward the Great Compassion Sect is to guarantee their safety. Otherwise, regardless of what the reasons are, I'll blame the Great Compassion Sect if my family is harmed. Jian Wushuang's voice was frosty. That condition was made to ensure the safety of his family. In the end, he had run-ins with way too many sects and severely injured many of them. Although they were shocked by his abilities and would not do anything upfront, those who held grudges might use dirty tactics as soon as he left Wuxia Wilderness. He did not wish to see Zhuo Yunfeng and his wife being harmed when he returned next time. Chapter 2492. The dust settled this condition of yours. Yun Zhan pondered for a while and finally said, I can promise you that after you leave Wuxia Wilderness, I'll assign experts to secretly protect your parents and make sure no harm would come to them. However, your big sister and second brother are both disciples of other sects. They are bound to train in the outside world and might even get involved with intersect fights. The Great Compassion Sect is unable to guarantee their safety. However, I promise you that I'll warn those various sects experts that other than reasonable intersect fights, anyone who dares seek revenge on both of them due to their grudges toward you will become the Great Compassion Sect's archenemy. Jian Wushuang was very satisfied with Yun Zhan's answer and praised him in his mind upon hearing that. That's all of my conditions since Lord Yun Zhan has agreed to them. I'll bear no grudge against the Great Compassion Sect and shall not cause any more troubles, said Jian Wushuang. Thank you. I shall have someone send over the instrument cultivation materials and 3,000 pieces of primordial stones as soon as possible. I must bid you farewell for now as I still have many affairs to attend to, said Yun Zhan. Farewell, said Jian Wushuang with a smile. Yun Zhan and the three supreme elders soon left. As for those various sects experts, they looked at each other and felt there was nothing more they could do. They would naturally dare not cross Jian Wushuang any further since even the Great Compassion Sect had bowed down. Many sects began to communicate with the Great Compassion Sect and discussed how they should be splitting the 3,000 pieces of primordial stones burden. Other sects began to leave, but one sect stayed behind. They approached Jian Wushuang. Wushuang, our young friend. A warm voice came from beside Jian Wushuang as a few figures appeared there. Among them were Elder Wujian, Elder Linghe, and the seventh elder whom Jian Wushuang was familiar. However, the one leading them was a gentleman in a green robe who was also the lord of Narcissus Island and an ultimate god expert, Ling Gong. "Ah, it's the people from Narcissus Island. I wonder what's the matter?" Jian Wushuang was expressionless as his voice turned even colder. Ling Gong and the rest felt slightly awkward. If not for their previous decisions, Jian Wushuang would have still been their disciple and called Ling Gong my lord. However, "My young friend, what happened before was truly Narcissus Island's fault for not handling it well, but it was necessary for us to make such decisions at that time. I came here in person today not to ask for your forgiveness and return to being our disciple once again. I only came to ask for you not to hold a grudge against Narcissus Island. That alone would be satisfactory. Please accept these presents that I personally prepared for you." Ling Gong presented an interspatial ring to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang accepted and scanned it before nodding slightly. There were many elixirs, natural treasures, and 500 primordial stones. "Please don't worry, gentlemen. I'm a person who remembers others' good deeds. Other than expelling me, Narcissus Island did not wrong me in any way. I shall accept these presents, and from here on, Narcissus Island and I'll not have any relations, let alone grudges. Please return safely." Jian Wushuang waved his hand. Ling Gong and the rest felt relieved. Jian Wushuang looked at Wujian who stood behind. "Brother Wujian, it's rare for you to come and visit me. Stay for a drink before you leave." Well, Wujian was a little hesitant and could not help but look at Ling Gong. "Elder Wujian, it's very kind of our young friend to invite you. Why don't you stay a while and drink with him?" Ling Gong said. "Yes." Wujian nodded. "My young friend Wushuang, we shall take our leave since we've said all we wanted to," said Ling Gong humbly. "Be safe now." Jian Wushuang's tone sounded rather indifferent. Those people from Narcissus Island left with the exception of Wujian. Jian Wushuang held Wujian's arm and went back to the governor's mansion. Zhuo Yunfeng, Luo Xinqin, Zhuo Bing, and Zhuo Peng were relieved when they saw Jian Wushuang return safely. They were constantly worried about Jian Wushuang's safety. After that, they threw a small banquet. Other than Jian Wushuang and his family, Wujian and the head of the Lin family, Lin Taifeng, were both invited. Everyone was happily drinking. "Haha, you scared me to death, Brother Wushuang. That was the Great Compassion sect you were dealing with. Even Yun Zhan had personally shown up, but he still couldn't do anything to you. He even accepted your conditions. Thanks. Of all the years I've been an elder of Narcissus Island, I've never seen the Great Compassion sect being so docile." Wujian exclaimed at his seat. If he had not witnessed it himself, he would not have believed the Lord of Great Compassion sect would agree to Jian Wushuang's ridiculous conditions. Jian Wushuang only smiled faintly. "Haha, it isn't the Great Compassion sect being docile, they merely didn't dare to show their tempers. That Yun Zhan was only testing my strength with his 3 palm strikes. In the end, he knew he couldn't kill me. In addition to my obvious talents and potentials, I would have grown to a level I could annihilate the Great Compassion sect with the flick of a finger in time." He bowed down because he had no choice. If he didn't bow down, the Great Compassion sect would have perished. "That's true." Wujian laughed. Meanwhile, Zhuo Yunfeng and the others sigh in relief. That was the Great Compassion sect, the first-ranked sect of Wuxia Wilderness. For Zhuo Yunfeng's son to have the potential to destroy the Great Compassion sect which forced them to bow down, such abilities were just. Zhuo Yunfeng was just incredibly proud of his son. "Oh yes, Brother Wujian. As I was talking to Yun Zhan, Lei Chong mentioned the Great Compassion sect would offer the territorial lord 1,000 primordial stones every millennium." "Who exactly is this territorial lord?" Jian Wushuang asked. The Great Compassion sect was the dominant sect of Wuxia Wilderness, but they still had to offer 1,000 pieces of primordial stones to the territorial lord every millennium. Jian Wushuang got curious about the territorial lord's identity. Wujian's expression turned serious. "Territorial lord. I know about this territorial lord, and what Lei Chong said is true. Not only Great Compassion sect but every sect in Wuxia Wilderness would also have to offer a certain number of primordial stones every millennium, including Narcissus Island. The Great Compassion sect would gather the stones and send them to the territorial lord. As for his true identity, Hes the lord of Northern Darkstar Territory. Northern Darkstar Territory? Jian Wushuang was intrigued. The Northern Darkstar Territory was a place he read about from one of the records. Chapter 2493, Territory Lord. Ancient God domain was vast and borderless. Wuxia Wilderness was only a small portion of the ancient God domain and was easily ignored. In normal circumstances, only when multiple wilderness combined would a star territory formed. When multiple star territories combined, it then became a domain. For example, Crimson Stone Saint was a domain lord in his mortal life who established the Crimson Stone Fort and was in complete control of a whole domain. There were a total of 381 star territories within his domain. A domain lord was a prominent figure in ancient God domain. Usually, only experts who were an undying saint or above were qualified to become the lord of a certain domain. Although a star territorial lord could not be compared with a domain lord, to be capable of leading so many wilderness would require one to have possessed extremely high abilities. As far as I know, Northern Darkstar Territory has at least 100 wilderness. Our Wuxia Wilderness is merely one of them. Every millennium, sects from each wilderness would honor the territorial lord by offering a certain number of primordial stones, just like how Federalists in mortal worlds would make offerings to their emperor every certain period. Of course, a star territorial lord could be considered an emperor on his own, said Wu Jian. Jian Wushuang nodded quietly. The territorial lord controls the entire star territory, which contains many wilderness sects who made offerings every millennium. The number of sects from the accumulative wilderness were so numerous that those primordial stones a territorial lord received every millennium were huge. A territorial lord must be very powerful to force sects from every wilderness to provide primordial stones tributes with every millennium, right? Jian Wushuang asked. Of course. In the ancient God domain, almost every star territorial lord is at least an earth ultimate god, with some even being heaven ultimate gods in order for them to keep the entire wilderness under control by themselves. Furthermore, every territorial lord has his official army, which has extremely high battle strength filled with ultimate gods and divine demons. They are also the territorial lord's means to stay in power, said Wu Jian. Is Earth Ultimate God the weakest within the ultimate god cultivation level? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. In the ancient god domain, ultimate gods can be further subcategorized to regular ultimate god, Earth Ultimate God, Heaven Ultimate, and Grand Ultimate God. The four categories of ultimate gods had tremendous strength differences. When one broke through to a new cultivation level, his ability would have fundamental changes. In Wuxia Wilderness, the ultimate gods Jian Wushuang had met were merely regular ultimate gods. For example, the three supreme elders were only at primary level regular ultimate god. The Lord of Great Compassion sect, Yun Zhan, was only a high-level regular ultimate god. Above high-level regular ultimate gods were peak regular ultimate god. Only after going through that could one have the opportunity to make a breakthrough into the ranks of Earth Ultimate God. In many wildernesses under Northern Darkstar Territory, regular Ultimate God is already the highest rank they could achieve. It's difficult to produce an Earth Ultimate God. Even if one was produced, he or she would choose to wander into the larger territory. They would seldom stay at a star territory to become the local authority. As for this territorial lord, he had the battle strength of an Earth Ultimate God and a powerful official army under him. That's why many sects within the wilderness had to make primordial stones offerings. If he made an order, no one within Northern Darkstar Territory would dare defy him, Jian Wushuang exclaimed in his mind. Jian Wushuang, you could very well become an Earth Ultimate God since you have such talents. If you are willing, you could also find ways to conquer a star territory and become a territorial lord by then and enjoy your position as a local authority, said Wu Jian in jest. Haha, we'll see by then. Jian Wushuang laughed. Wu Jian thought Jian Wushuang was only answering him perfunctorily. He had no idea the thought of becoming a territorial lord had begun growing in Jian Wushuang's mind. After all, as soon as one became a territorial lord, one would receive a huge number of primordial stones every millennium, and Jian Wushuang needed primordial stones. However, he knew very well that if he could not even defeat a high-level regular ultimate god such as Yun Zhan, he was truly far from becoming an earth ultimate god. Wu Jian stayed at the governor's residence for 2 days before returning to Narcissus Island. Jian Wushuang did not try asking him to stay. The 3rd day after Wu Jian left one of the Great Compassion Sect's supreme elders, and Junju arrived at Blazing Moon City. These are 3,000 pieces of primordial stones that we and all those sects had gathered. Lord Yun Zhan instructed me to bring you these 3,000 pieces first. As for the instrumental cultivation materials, the Great Compassion Sect will collect them and Lord Yun Zhan shall personally send them to you, said Junju. In that case, please thank Lord Yun Zhan for me. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. After Junju left, Jian Wushuang found a secret room and sat down cross-legged. In front of him was a collection of 3,500 primordial stones in total. Junju had sent 3,000 while another 500 pieces were given by Narcissus Island. Jian Wushuang randomly picked up a primordial stone and a terrifying ingesting power exploded. In a short moment, the pure divine powers that filled the primordial stone were completely absorbed by him. As expected, Jian Wushuang's eyes were twinkling with light. Although one primordial stone's worth on the market is equivalent to 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power, the divine powers contained in it is worth more than 10,000 drops of ancient god divine power. Most importantly, divine powers in primordial stone are a few times purer than ancient god divine power, hence it helps me quite a lot. A total of 3,500 pieces of primordial stones, Jian Wushuang's eyes were shining. The terrifying ingesting power exploded once again as it ruthlessly ingested and refined the primordial stones. His speed of ingestion and refinement was unbelievable. Within a day, he had finished refining all 3,500 primordial stones. The primordial stones had also turned into regular stones with some even cracked. Phew! Jian Wushuang exhaled lightly and gradually opened his eyes. Compared to absorbing ancient god divine power from divine power ocean, absorbing primordial stones is more effective. It's a shame that the number of primordial stones is not enough. Although refining 3,500 pieces of primordial stones helped increase my divine powers, it didn't help me to achieve a breakthrough. It's even a little shy from reaching the peak of second-class divine demon. If I want to make a breakthrough to first-class divine demon, I'll need a lot more primordial stones. Jian Wushuang's eyes had shown a little desire as he once again thought of the Northern Darkstar Territorial Lord. If I ever have a chance, I should try becoming a territorial lord. Chapter 2494, Strange Old Foe. After the incident, Wuxia Wilderness had gradually calmed down. The sects returned to their norm with disciples fighting and wandering around as they usually would. Nothing much had changed in Wuxia Wilderness. The only change was the disciples from every sect's admiration toward Jian Wushuang. He was a super demon who forced the Great Compassion Sect to bow down to him by relying entirely on his own abilities. During these calm moments, Jian Wushuang spent his days quietly within the walls of Blazing Moon City and cultivating secret techniques. In Saint's Tomb, he made a breakthrough to second-class divine demon realm from peak chaotic realm in an instant. Naturally, some of those secret techniques he was practicing could also be upgraded, but there was no time. Now, he finally had the luxury to begin advancing those secret techniques peacefully. 4 months passed. Whoosh! A figure floated in the void and hovered above Blazing Moon City Governor's residence as he stopped. My young friend, Jian Wushuang. A deep but friendly voice resonated towards the governor's residence. In a short moment, a voice transmitting from within the governor's residence, Lord Yun Zhan is finally here. Please come in. Yun Zhan immediately flew into the governor's residence. In a yard under the willow tree where Jian Wushuang spent his younger days reading various journals, Jian Wushuang and Yun Zhan sat at a stone table and faced each other. There were quality wine and fruits on the table. Lord Yun, You only return after 4 months. I hope you bring good tidings. Jian Wushuang smiled. Yunjun turned his palm upwards and presented an interspatial ring he had prepared. As per your request, 4 portions of red sun secret essence, 5 red blood fruits, 100 spectacular beast scales, and 10,000 pounds of celestial iron ore. We had to obtain spectacular beast scales from other domains, hence the long wait. By the way, the 2 drops of purple shimmer which you requested for. I apologize that I could only find a drop of it, said Yunjun. Jian Wushuang took a glance. It was true. Everything was there except for the other drop of purple shimmer. Jian Wushuang frowned. Only a drop of purple shimmer is missing. Didn't you say you know who has the other drop? Don't tell me you couldn't ask from that person with your background and abilities. My young friend, I've already told you that even though I know who possesses it, it won't be easy to get. I tried many ways, but unfortunately couldn't convince him to give me the purple shimmer. Yunjin smiled wryly. May I ask who has the purple shimmer? Jian Wushuang asked. Hez called Strange Old Feng. Have you heard of him? Yunjin asked. Jian Wushuang shook his head. No. If even Lord Yunjin can't convince him, I guess Hez at least an ultimate god expert. Correct. Strange Old Feng is an ultimate god. Furthermore, one with extremely strong abilities and very hard to deal with. I hear you were in Luogu territory not long ago, so I assumed you probably know the situation over there. Yunjin said. Luogu territory? Jian Wushuang's heart was racing. When he heard of the words Luogu territory, the first thing he thought of was the mysterious reincarnated expert, Miss Xiao. The reason he, Xiao Heng, and a few other disciples of Narcissus Island went to Luogu territory was to rescue Miss Xiao. Luogu territory was the most chaotic place in Wuxia wilderness with the highest ruthless killings. Yunjun began to explain, there are 9 cities in Luogu territory, with 9 different governors, but the real power that controls Luogu territory are a few reclusive supreme ultimate gods who hide in the dark. Strange Old Feng is one of them. Furthermore, has an eccentric who's extremely withdrawn. A few genius disciples from the Great Compassion sect were wandering around Luogu territory years ago and carelessly had a run-in with him. He cut off all their limbs and hung them up the city walls before torturing them to death. When we learned about this occurrence, Supreme Elder Lei Chong personally went to seek justice for those disciples, hence the start of enmity between Strange Old Feng and us. Moreover, our hatred only grew stronger following multiple conflicts. In the end, I had to personally intervene and lead our 3 Supreme Elders to attack him, but he was incredibly fast and very good at staying alive. The 4 of us were cornered and couldn't kill him. We came to a stalemate, and since it wouldn't do us any good if the fight continued, we stopped fighting. After that battle, we never took initiative to cross each other again. However, our hatred didn't get resolved. According to our intelligence, the purple shimmer is in his possession. Recently, I have personally gone to look for him and try to convince him many times. I went to the extent of offering something of the equal value and even something of a higher value than the purple shimmer. Unfortunately, he didn't agree. Yunjin looked helpless. He had truly done what he could, but Strange Old Feng was relentless. Really? Jian Wushuang finally understood. The 2 parties already had hatred towards each other, but since neither of them could hurt the other, they were forced to stop fighting. Unlike Jian Wushuang and the Great Compassion sect who completely cast aside their grudges. In a situation as such, it would be normal for Strange Old Feng to not hand over the purple shimmer to his enemy. Lord Yunjun, since this is the case, would Strange Old Feng exchange the purple shimmer with me if I personally look for him? Jian Wushuang smiled. Well, I can't say for sure. Strange Old Feng is a peculiar one and you can't predict him as you do with a normal person after all. If you find him personally, he may or may not hand it to you. What's worse is that he could just kill you. Of course, you don't have to be afraid of Strange Old Feng with your abilities. I'd say, give it a try, said Yunjun. In that case, could you come with me? Jian Wushuang asked. Not a problem. When would you like to go? Yunjin agreed heartily. Shall we go now? Jian Wushuang smiled. After he informed Zhuo Yunfeng, he and Yunjun began their journey to Luogu territory. There were 9 cities in Luogu territory, with each of them humongous and filled with experts. Following Yunjun's lead, Jian Wushuang arrived at one of the cities. Is strange old Feng living in the city? Jian Wushuang squinted and spread out his soul power. Chapter 2495. Crazy old man. The city was huge, hence Jian Wushuang's soul power could only cover a small area and did not manage to find any aura of an ultimate god expert. Strange old Feng has a strange way with things. I've just inquired and it seems like he's currently in a fighting arena, said Yunjun. Jian Wushuang got slightly excited before nodding and said, a fighting arena? Lord Yun, I would like you to wait here while I'll go meet him. If he's willing to exchange the purple shimmer with me, it will save a lot of effort. If he's not, I'll have to ask you to fight alongside me and force him to hand it over with our overwhelming abilities. No problem, answered Yunjun very heartily. Helping Jian Wushuang to obtain the second drop of purple shimmer was to honor their agreement. Yunjun naturally had to help. Jian Wushuang entered the city and soon arrived at a gigantic fighting arena in the city center. The arena was so wide and looked boundless enough to fit 1 million audiences. There was a big gymnasium in the center with 2 chaotic divine demons engaging in an intense fight. The fights in Luogu territories fighting arenas did not stop until death occurred. It was insane, as the fight would only end if one of the experts died. It was because of that the fighting arena attracted a lot of experts to attend. There were countless experts sitting around the gymnasium while shouting and growling in a frenzy. Among them was one especially passionate person. It was a dirty old man who was clad in torn black robes, incredibly messy hair, and dirt-covered body as if he was a beggar. Haha. My disciple, go. Kill him off. Don't mess around with him, just twist his head off. Press him down, don't make me lose face. The dirty old man's voice was the loudest and most piercing one, making a lot of people look at him. Jian Wushuang spotted the dirty old man immediately the moment he entered the fighting arena. Is he strange old Feng? Jian Wushuang squinted slightly. Judging from his looks and actions, the dirty old man did not look like an expert at all. However, Jian Wushuang's senses were clearly telling him that among those cultivators in the arena, that dirty old man was the only one who possessed an incomparably strong aura. He was obviously an ultimate god. As for those 2 people fighting in the gymnasium, the one who was tall and muscular seemed like strange old Feng's disciple. He sends his disciple to fight to his death in an arena. Doesn't he worry about his disciple getting killed? Jian Wushuang muttered to himself. He could tell that strange old Feng's disciple was only a second-class divine demon. His battle strength was normal and not considered strong. His opponent was also a second-class divine demon. At the moment, it was hard to predict who would survive the fight. However, luck seemed to side with strange old Feng's disciple as he narrowly won. His opponent's head was blasted open, but his shoulder was pierced through by a 3-finger attack, leaving behind 3 bloody holes and a very pale face. Haha, you won. You won again. Strange old Feng was overjoyed and looked extremely crazy. At one corner of the arena, the face of a chubby and greasy middle-aged man turned gloomy. Supervisor, this guy has won 3 games consecutively and those who lost to him are our resident divine demons. That crazy old fart who screams like a banshee is probably his master. He bet a lot of ancient god divine powers on his disciple before every game. We're suffering a big loss with just these 3 games, said an assistant in black respectfully to the supervisor. How much did we lose? Asked the supervisor coldly. The crazy old fart bet 1,000 drops of ancient god divine powers during the first game. After he won, he bet another 2,000 drops for the second game, then 4,000 for the third. We've lost 7,000 drops of ancient god divine power to this crazy old man alone, and that doesn't include the other bets, said the assistant in black. The supervisor was not happy. 7,000 drops of ancient god divine power. Doesn't that equate to the entire savings of a lesser peak divine demon? Watch them both, kill them right away as soon as they leave the arena. Bring back all the ancient god divine powers which we lost and their interspatial ring. Yes. The assistant in black went on to oversee the arrangement immediately. Running a huge fighting arena in one of Luogu territory's 9 cities meant terrifyingly high profit. However, the high profit did not just come from obvious gains. It also included some shady businesses in the dark. For example, the 7,000 drops of ancient god divine power was enough of a reason to do said shady business. Soon after, strange old Feng left the fighting arena with his disciple. Not long after exiting the fighting area, on the streets, whoosh, 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 more than 20 figures surrounded them. Master! The disciple was startled. He was only a second-class divine demon, while those who appeared before them were divine demon experts. Among them, there were 6 second-class divine demons and a first-class divine demon. Old fart, you'd better give up all the ancient god divine power you have won and your interspatial rings, then we'll let you live, ordered the first-class divine demon. Haha, isn't it true that there's no such thing as free lunch? However, you're very foolish to rob me. Strange old Feng scoffed. Whoosh. His black figure flashed and disappeared. A second later, he was back to where he stood. The disciple looked around confused as he found around 20 people, which included those 6 second-class and a first-class divine demon, collapsed together on the ground. Their blood spilled everywhere. The disciple was shocked at first but became overjoyed right after. He knew that he had studied under the right teacher. His master was absolutely an earth-shattering super expert who was perhaps a peak divine demon. No, probably even stronger. Let's go, kid, said strange old Feng. The disciple nodded and followed his master. However, strange old Feng stopped once again after taking 2 steps. Achem! Strange old Feng raised his head and saw a young man carrying a sword on his back standing on the streets ahead with his arms crossed and walked toward them. There's more of them. Strange old Feng felt slightly surprised. His soul power briefly scanned their surroundings but did not find another person's existence. Moreover, this person before him looked very young, but he could not see through him. That surprised strange old Feng even more. Finally, the young man went up to him. Greetings, Senior Feng. Jian Wushuang greeted humbly. Chapter 2496. Doing it the hard way. Who are you, kid? Strange old Feng looked at Jian Wushuang with his weird evil eyes. Doesn't matter who I am. I'm just here to make an exchange with you, Senior Feng, said Jian Wushuang. What kind of exchange? Strange old Feng asked. I hear you have a drop of purple shimmer. I would like to exchange for it. I hope Senior Feng is willing to give it to me. I'll of course exchange it for something of equal or even higher value, said Jian Wushuang. Strange old Feng's face turned cold. Purple shimmer? Hee. Yun Zhan from Great Compassion Sect came to look for me and wanted it as well not long ago. Unfortunately, I didn't agree. He wanted it but couldn't get it and now has playing with his little tricks and asking a kid like you to exchange for it. Haha, does he think I'm an idiot? No matter what tactics he uses, the Great Compassion Sect can only dream about getting the purple shimmer from me. I'd rather destroy the purple shimmer than handing it to them. Jian Wushuang panicked and said, Senior Feng, I'm not from the Great Compassion Sect and I'm in no way related to them either. Hee. Do I look like I care if you're related to them or otherwise? No matter what, I won't give the purple shimmer to anyone. Only thing is, kid, strange old Feng shot a glance at Jian Wushuang as his eyes shined with a discreet but sharp glint. I don't like your face, so, you must die. A wind blade immediately formed from nothing in front of strange old Feng. In a flash, the wind blade disappeared and in the next moment, it appeared before Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang had not expected strange old Feng to suddenly attack him as his face turned gloomy. Furthermore, strange old Feng performed a deadly move immediately without worrying about his status as an ultimate god expert. However, it was not a threat to Jian Wushuang with that impromptu wind blade. Jian Wushuang merely raised his hand, gripped the wind blade, and shattered it. Oh! Strange old Feng was surprised. Second-class divine demon? Strange old Feng's disciple looked over in shock. When Jian Wushuang was fighting, he concealed his divine power aura, hence nobody would sense his actual cultivation level. As strange old Feng started a fight with him, his second-class divine demon's divine power aura had been revealed. You're a mere second-class divine demon, yet you could easily fend off my attack. Interesting. Strange old Feng smiled weirdly, but his expression suddenly changed. Oh, by the way, I heard rumors of a monster in Wuxia Wilderness defeating 3 supreme elders of great compassion outside Saint's Tomb, being only at the cultivation level of divine demon realm. After that, he even endured 3 direct palm strikes from Yun Zhan and forced the Great Compassion sect to lower their heads. That monster is also good at sword principles and is very young. I guess that's you. Yes, it is. Jian Wushuang immediately admitted. Haha, it's really you. I think I remember your name, something like Jian Wushuang. Strange old Feng giggled. That's correct. So I take it that you understand I have nothing to do with the Great Compassion sect. As for the purple shimmer, it is me who wants it. I'm only forcing the Great Compassion sect to get it for me. I wonder if you are willing to exchange the purple shimmer with me now? Jian Wushuang asked. In his mind, strange old Feng had deep grudges against the Great Compassion sect, and the fact the Great Compassion sect suffered a great loss under Jian Wushuang would have meant he helped strange old Feng let off some steam. In addition, the purple shimmer was not useful to strange old Feng. Strange old Feng should probably be willing to exchange it with him. However, hell no. Strange old Feng directly waved his hand. Kid, whether or not you have a relationship with the Great Compassion sect has got nothing to do with me. The purple shimmer is my possession. It's my freedom whether I want to exchange it or not, and now I don't want you to have it, but if you can of course insist on having it. However, there's one condition. What would that be? Jian Wushuang was still calm inside. It's very simple. You knew I have beef with the Great Compassion sect. Although you've killed many of its disciples, the effects toward their sect aren't strong. I want you to seriously hurt Great Compassion sect once by, for example, killing one of their supreme elders or something. Strange old Feng grinned devilishly. You want me to kill a supreme elder from the Great Compassion sect? Jian Wushuang squinted. That's right. A supreme elder is worth a drop of purple shimmer. If you do so, you don't need to exchange anything with me. I'll give you that drop of purple shimmer directly. What do you say? Strange old Feng smiled. Jian Wushuang, you can take your time to think about it. After all, you have pissed them off once and they couldn't do anything to you. There's no reason you can't do it again if that's the case. Jian Wushuang said, my grudge with the Great Compassion sect is already over, plus I've made peace with all the other sects. I'm not like you. I do care about my status as a person. If the Great Compassion sect doesn't cross me again, I won't attack them. Is that so? Then I can't help you. That drop of purple shimmer will always stay in my interspatial ring, hehe. Even though it doesn't do me much good by keeping it, just watching you suckers scratching your heads over it makes me happy. Strange old Feng began to giggle. Looks like it's impossible to have a fair trade with you. Jian Wushuang's eyesight began to turn frosty. He did not plan to fight, as strange old Feng was an ultimate god after all. If the joint attacks of Yun Zhan and his 3 supreme elders could not even defeat him, he was not one to be taken lightly. Jian Wushuang knew it was wise not to cross him, hence he was being polite and humble throughout. Naturally, it would be best if strange old Feng was willing to exchange. However, strange old Feng was not willing, hence Jian Wushuang had employed more forceful tactics. Now you wanna do it the hard way since the easy way didn't work. Who do you think you are? Strange old Feng was not afraid at all while he looked at Jian Wushuang in ridicule. It's not possible if I'm the only one doing it, but, Jian Wushuang smiled. What if I joined in? A grand deep voice suddenly filled the air. Yun Zhan's figure suddenly appeared in the void. Oh, Yun Zhan. You guys seem prepared. Strange old Feng's expression darkened as well but felt no fear. Strange old Feng, hand over the purple shimmer. I'm still willing to exchange it for something more valuable. If not, I'll have to attack. Don't forget your disciple is right here. Aren't you worried I would kill him? Jian Wushuang's voice was cold and slightly threatening. Chapter 2497, 1,000 feet divine god, did you say kill my disciple? Strange old Feng smiled menacingly. Master, don't worry about me, Strange old Feng's disciple had just spoken, but his eyes popped out in surprise before he had finished speaking. A dry old palm had penetrated his body with a terrifying force and completely crushed his internal organs. The disciple's expression was one of disbelief as he fell to the ground. You actually killed your own disciple? Jian Wushuang's face showed consternation. Strange old Feng is cruel and vicious. He has been alone. How could he possibly want a disciple for real? He probably treats his disciple like a toy collected at will, said Yunzhan. Strange old Feng waved his palm and said with a wicked laugh. Hehe, Yunzhan sure knows me best. Now that no one's in the way, let me see how powerful the most heaven-defying divine demon in the history of Wuxia Wilderness. His body was surging with an aura that only ultimate god experts could possess while speaking. His breath of power carried a hint of malice that engulfed the entire place. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly. Just considering the breath of power alone, Strange old Feng's aura was stronger than the 3 supreme elders of the Great Compassion sect, but was a far cry from a high-level ultimate god such as Yunzhan. He has reached peak early-stage ultimate god realm. Jian Wushuang concluded on Strange old Feng's strength. Strange old Feng made a move. A blast of cold wind swept across the sky at a terrifying speed. After Strange old Feng went at full speed, he did not swoop in the direction where Jian Wushuang was to everyone's surprise. Instead, he turned and ran away. Running away? Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold and his figure immediately sprang out to chase after Strange old Feng. Haha, I'm not stupid to contend with both of you at the same time. There was a peal of loud unbridled laughter from Strange old Feng. This old thing is very cunning. Yunzhan's face sulked as he went after Jian Wushuang to kill Strange old Feng. The 3 of them were extremely fast. Not long after, they were outside the city. Jian Wushuang, I've dealt with Strange old Feng before. His current speed is already amazingly fast, but he still has a life-saving secret technique. Once he uses it, his speed will rise to another level which enables him to shake both of us off from pursuing after him, said Yunzhan. It shouldn't be easy for him to cast that technique, right? Jian Wushuang asked in a low voice. Well, it's not easy, but if he has no choice, hell do it, said Yunzhan. We shall not give him the chance to perform it then. Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold as he chased after Strange old Feng alongside Yunzhan. Suddenly, 2 holograms lurched forward at the same time and Jian Wushuang's speed increased and surpassed Yunzhan. The distance between Jian Wushuang and Strange old Feng was getting closer. Is Jian Wushuang that fast? Strange old Feng noticed the movements behind him and was surprised. It's space-time apparition and there are 2 holograms. No wonder. However, Hez alone, so even if he catches up to me, he can't do anything. Strange old Feng was not bothered. He was also not in a rush to cast his life-saving secret technique. The distance between Jian Wushuang and Strange old Feng was getting closer, with Jian Wushuang's eyes also getting colder. Finally, Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with a severe glare. It's the time. Buzz. Majestic golden divine power condensed abruptly behind Jian Wushuang. In a blink of an eye, it turned into a huge golden god shadow. The golden god shadow was different from the one he cast 4 months ago. 4 months ago, Jian Wushuang used the divine god of punishment secret technique and formed a 900 feet tall golden god shadow. For the past 4 months, Jian Wushuang stayed in Blazing Moon City and worked hard to improve the powers of those secret techniques he had. The golden god shadow he formed now had exceeded 1,000 feet. 1,000 feet golden god shadow. It represented the 2nd level of the divine god of punishment technique and should not be taken lightly. The current golden shadow compared to 4 months ago was a whole new level, with its power at completely different levels. Under the amplification of golden god shadow, Jian Wushuang's breath of divine power soared before his big hands shot forward and clapped. Prison of punishment. Rumbling. Golden divine power shot out madly from the golden god shadow in all directions as it spread across the entire space and blotted out the heavens and covered the sun. Strange old Feng was not far in front of Jian Wushuang as he rapidly fled. However, no matter how fast he could not match up to the golden divine power's speed. In an instant, the vast golden divine power had surpassed him and condensed into a golden barrier at the void in front of him. A huge golden prison took shape. Both Jian Wushuang and Strange Old Feng were trapped within the golden prison. Strange Old Feng was nervous, but soon let out a cold snort. A dark red spear appeared in his hand. The dark red spear carried an infinite amount of evil spirits. It turned into a swift and violent lighting from being enveloped by the tyrannical divine powers of Strange Old Feng as it thrust fiercely towards the golden barrier. Bang! There was a loud noise. A spiral pit the size of a water bucket appeared on the golden barrier, but the spear did not penetrate the golden barrier. This prison is so hard. Strange Old Feng was surprised. He did not know one of the 5 most powerful secret techniques of the 7 Stars Black Sects. The divine god of punishment was extremely powerful and famous. 4 months ago, Jian Wushuang condensed only a 900 feet high golden god shadow, and the prison formed was not something an ordinary ultimate god could break away. Outside Saint's tomb, the 3 supreme elders of the Great Compassion sect were trapped in the prison of punishment, and Lei Chong had to use the thunderbolt bead, which he paid a great price to refine just for blasting a hole through the golden prison. The thunderbolt bead exploded, and the power it emanated alone was equivalent to a high-level ultimate god's power. When the golden god shadow had reached a height of 1,000 feet. The prison of punishment's powers had also increased by a huge amount. Even a high-level ultimate god as Yun Zhan had to use his strongest move just for attempting his luck to puncture a hole in the golden prison. Strange Old Feng was only at the peak early stage ultimate god. It was impossible for him to break the golden prison. Chapter 2498, Compromised Humph. After a cold snort, a second dark red spear appeared in Strange Old Feng's other palm. He was holding 2 spears and gathering streams of terrifying divine power in his hands as he rifled both spears swiftly towards the golden barrier. Bang! 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 The spears drove towards the golden barrier over and over again, hitting the same spot 13 times. The pit that appeared on the barrier before gave way under the impact and began expanding in size, but at the same time, it was recovering at an astonishing speed. After receiving attacks from Strange Old Feng, the pit reverted to its original appearance and was still rapidly recovering. What? Strange Old Feng frowned. It's useless unless you can tear it down with a single blow or blast a hole through it. Otherwise, no matter how much impact you applied, it'll instantly recover. You can't escape. Jian Wushuang explained with a cold voice as his figure appeared behind Strange Old Feng without warnings. A grim and forbidding sword intent swept up. Jian Wushuang kept a cold and distant look. The Blood Mountain sword brandished at will in his hand. Swordlight filled the space as a sea of swords formed in an instant and inundated Strange Old Feng. Strange Old Feng turned around immediately with his 2 spears emanating evil spirits. He decided to confront Jian Wushuang head-on. Jian Wushuang was extremely powerful. Although he had not used the 7-star secret technique, his divine powers were much stronger than before from absorbing 3,500 primordial stones. He also had the 1,000 feet golden god shadow behind him. Those swordlights spread out with each being extremely powerful and fast. This kid is strong. He's only a divine demon, but his combat prowess is no lesser than mine and perhaps even stronger than me. Strange Old Feng's face got uglier as both of them engaged in a battle. All of a sudden, Jian Wushuang's figure briefly stopped. The next moment, he dived steeply down with the Blood Mountain sword in his hand evolving into a long snake. There were harsh clattering sounds as the void was torn apart like a piece of paper with everything being dissolved into emptiness. It was soundless and stirless with no traces of anything. Except for a sword shadow that swept past. Spacetime sword technique, 3rd form, pure shadow. It was a sword technique created during his enlightenment from Fengtian scroll in Saint's tomb, but Jian Wushuang never used it before when he fought against the Great Compassion sect's ultimate gods. It was time for the pure shadow technique to show its powers. Clang. With loud clanging sounds, the spears in Strange Old Feng's hands skewed slightly when collided with the sword shadow. The sword shadow was like a phantom as it went straight towards Strange Old Feng's body. A layer of dim black light flashed on the surface of Strange Old Feng's body in the form of a heavy barrier. Bang! Strange Old Feng was sent falling back while Jian Wushuang stood firm in place. Strange Old Feng has strong self-defensive abilities. I'm surprised my sword did not hurt him. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed as he muttered to himself. Jian Wushuang. Yunjin finally arrived, entered the golden prison with Jian Wushuang's permission, and appeared next to him. This prison, Yunjin examined the golden prison around him and was amazed by its power. He speculated it would be hard for him to break out of the prison if trapped within it. Strange Old Feng, you have nowhere to escape. Just hand over the purple shimmer. Otherwise, Jian Wushuang's cold voice echoed in the golden prison. Strange Old Feng replied angrily, Jian Wushuang, there are no grudges between us, but you have ill feelings for the Great Compassion Sect and Yunjin. All you want is the purple shimmer. Both of us should join forces and use your domain to teach Yunjin a lesson. The purple shimmer will be yours after you help me fight against him. Yunjin was irritated. I've already said before, the conflicts between me and the Great Compassion Sect have been resolved. I will not attack them. I shall take it by force since you are unwilling to hand me the purple shimmer. Lord Yunjin, let's attack together, said Jian Wushuang. All right. Yunjin nodded. Haha. So what if you both team up? So what if there's this golden prison? You can't kill me even if I'm unable to escape. Strange Old Feng laughed arrogantly. We can't kill you. Really? Jian Wushuang smiled. The moment he finished his sentence, the golden divine powers pressure went down on Strange Old Feng. The prison of punishment was made up of prison and domain. Prison traps the opponent and domain oppresses them while improving the user's powers. The power of one party depletes while the other gains, widening the strength gap. This technique was manifested to its fullest with Jian Wushuang's 1,000 feet golden god shadow. What? Strange Old Feng's figure sank. Although he was an ultimate god expert and had reached peak early stage ultimate god, his power had been reduced rapidly under the golden divine powers pressure. His strength had dropped by nearly 20%. It was an awful percentage of power depletion to him. Go! Jian Wushuang commanded in a low voice and attacked alongside Yunjin. He had chosen to discharge his 7 stars secret techniques power and his divine power breath skyrocketed and was approaching the level of the first-class divine demon realm. Boom! Boom! The two experts delivered their shots at the same time. Jian Wushuang's sword skills were perfectly displayed whereas Yunjin was being overbearing. His big hands swung out again and again with each palm print turned into a giant ape, brown bear, tiger, and leopard interchangeably every time he drew his palm. Every palm was derived from extremely powerful and ferocious animals. The combat power of high-level ultimate god was fully displayed by Yunjin. As for Jian Wushuang, he relied fully on the support of elevated powers from the Golden Prison's domain and had soon attained combat powers equal to that of a high-level ultimate god. It barely achieved that level of power as he was still slightly inferior compared to Yunjin. However, he was much stronger than Strange Old Feng, especially when Strange Old Feng's power had been decreased by 20%. It was a complete showdown. Strange Old Feng had no room to repel the attacks and could only rely on his physical protection abilities to resist the attacks. It would not last long and soon, he would give way as his body reached the limit. Strange Old Feng had no means to escape while being trapped within the golden prison. His life-saving secret technique could not be used either. Strange Old Feng was nervous. Stop. Stop. Jian Wushuang, don't you want the purple shimmer anymore? Okay, I'll give it to you. Strange Old Feng screamed as he obviously had no choice but to compromise. Chapter 2499. Killed. Strange Old Feng waved his hand as a hazy purple light was thrown towards Jian Wushuang. The purple light was a grain of purple shimmer with a peculiar aura. Although it was like a grain of sand, it was actually the size of a pea. Purple shimmer. Jian Wushuang's eyes lit up, waved his hand, and sent the drop of purple shimmer into his interspatial ring. Jian Wushuang was done collecting all the materials needed to refine his life armor with that. All he needed to do next was to find Master Kuan and ask for his expertise to refine that armor. Jian Wushuang, I've given you the purple shimmer. Can you let me out of this golden prison now? Strange Old Feng called out. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes at Strange Old Feng before immediately shook his head. Sorry, but no. What did you say? Strange Old Feng was startled. If you were someone else, perhaps I will let you go. But you're cruel. You even killed your own disciple. What else can you not do? You gave the purple shimmer to me because you have no other choice, but once you escape, you'll probably retaliate against me. Even if you can't retaliate against me, you will retaliate against my family, and that's troublesome for me. I'll have to kill you then since I've provoked you and not leave such a risk behind. Jian Wushuang wore a ghastly look. Strange Old Feng was cruel, unruly, and despicably. He dared to madly retaliate against the great compassionate sect, what more towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was sure that Strange Old Feng would seek vengeance with him thereafter. Lord Yunzhen, we'll join forces to kill him, said Jian Wushuang coldly. Haha, sure thing. Yunzhen nodded without hesitation. The Great Compassion Sect had wanted to kill Strange Old Feng for a long time but lacked the abilities and chance to do so. How could Yunzhen possibly let go of a perfect opportunity that lay in front of him? Kill. Jian Wushuang and Yunzhen delivered their shots again. They no longer held back and went in for the kill. Jian Wushuang, you didn't keep your promise. Strange Old Feng was very frightened and kept screaming. Promise? Haha. If you choose to give the purple shimmer at the beginning I wouldn't have hurt you, but now, you should just go to hell. Jian Wushuang's killing intent shot up and combined the high-level ultimate god's combat power from both Jian Wushuang and Yunzhen. Strange Old Feng could only retreat further and further as his injuries became more and more obvious. Eventually, his body had reached the limit of how much it could resist. Buzz. Strange Old Feng's body collapsed and his voice completely gone. Finally, he's dead. Yunzhen sighed lightly after seeing Strange Old Feng being killed. The Great Compassion Sect has tried to kill him many times, but his life-saving ability is so great that we failed countless times. He's finally dead this time. Thank you, friend Wushuang. Your prison is indeed amazing. Yunzhen knew the Golden Prison had greatly contributed to their success in killing Strange Old Feng. Had it not been for the Golden Prison which trapped Strange Old Feng, he would have used his life-saving secret technique to escape. Jian Wushuang also murmured, the life-saving ability of this old monster is indeed strong. Apart from his life-saving secret technique, his body's defensive abilities were also powerful. Ordinary early-stage ultimate god would have died much earlier under our combined attacks, but he persevered for quite some time. Anyway, he's dead now. Wushuang, my friend, Strange Old Feng is dead and you have received the last drop of purple shimmer. The Great Compassion Sect has fulfilled our promise to you. There are still many things to deal with in the Great Compassion Sect. I shall leave first, said Yunzhen. Thank you, Lord Yunzhen. Jian Wushuang smiled. Although Jian Wushuang was not sure whether the Great Compassionate Sect still held grudges against him, the two sides had apparently resolved their conflicts. Unless one party decides to fall out, there should be no more fights between them. All the instrument cultivation materials have been collected. I'll go directly to Master Kuan in Luogu territory. Jian Wushuang chuckled and left for Qingxiao City, one of Luogu territory's 9 cities. As soon as Jian Wushuang arrived at Qingxiao City, he thought of Miss Xiao from Hundred Flowers Tower. After Miss Xiao vanquished the Mu clan, she left Wuxia Wilderness and no one knew where she went. Regardless, there was a verbal alliance between him and Miss Xiao. They might meet in the future. A towering and grandiose mansion floated above the void. It was none other than Master Kun's residence. Jian Wushuang had been there before. He had to use some tactics before being allowed to enter and meet Master Kuan. Jian Wushuang went straight into the mansion with an apparition such that the guards did not notice his existence at all. A bald elder in an exquisite room was none other than Master Kuan, who wore a black robe and was carefully browsing a jade slip. Suddenly, a light breeze blew and a figure appeared in the center of the room. Who? Master Kuan was alerted and raised his head. Master Kuan, long time no see. Jian Wushuang folded his hands behind him and smiled. You are. Master Kuan looked at Jian Wushuang in a daze. He was unable to recognize Jian Wushuang, although Jian Wushuang looked rather familiar to him. Master Kuan, do you remember a chaotic divine demon who came not long ago and asked for help to cultivate a life armor? Jian Wushuang smiled. Life armor? Are you Jian Yi? Master Kuan finally figured who Jian Wushuang was. The last time Jian Wushuang visited Master Kuan, he was wearing a hat to cover his appearance, hence Master Kuan did not recognize him at first glance. It's my pleasure that Master Kuan still remembers me. Master Kuan, do you remember the agreement we had? These are the instrument cultivation materials which you mentioned. Please help me to cultivate a life armor. Jian Wushuang handed over an interspatial ring. Master Kuan took the ring and looked into it only to be shocked. 4 red sun secret essences, 5 red blood fruits, 2 drops of purple shimmer, 100 pieces of spectacular beast scale, and 10,000 pounds of celestial iron ore. You have managed to gather all of them and in such a short time. Master Kuan was flabbergasted. He knew very well how rare those instrument cultivation materials were in Wuxia wilderness. There were 5 types of materials and each of them was priceless. In addition, they were required in rather large quantities such that even for a top sect such as Narcissus Island, it would be impossible to gather those materials. Master Kuan had not considered Jian Wushuang would be able to collect all of those materials. However, you're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.